ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Kari Mansion. My name is Inky, I am your hostess with the mostest, and today I am bringing you even more Fallout slop. What with the introduction of the Fallout live action series and a veritable smorgasbord of Fallout related content coming our way recently, I have been dipping my toes into the lore and universe of Fallout, because although I may not be that interested in the games, I am very interested in the universe. Much like how I hate League of Legends, but I adore everything that goes on around it. So to enable that crippling ADHD, and as a way for me to enable my hyperfixation on things that I shouldn't be watching, we are going to be learning all about the different vaults within the Fallout universe. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this is every single Fallout vault ranked from the most horrific to the most insane, and this is a bit of a long drawn out one, but I have a slight hyperfixation on the Fallout universe, having been watching the series recently, and I thought this would be kind of interesting to watch for no other reason than to waste some time and to get a little bit of unnecessary knowledge to fill our brains with that could have otherwise been used for learning important things like how to file your taxes, how to be a functional human being. But who needs that when you've got Fallout content? So, here we go.
Home to giant roaches, ghouls with hats, and this adorable good boy. But if we're being honest, none of us are here for that. Because we're here.
See, when you get these like post-apocalyptic games or worlds or universes, it would be very, very boring to try and keep them in the realms of normality. I feel like in a post-apocalyptic world, if you're trying to keep things normal, you're kind of losing the point of the fantasy that a post-apocalypse can provide you. If you're gonna be in a post-apocalyptic universe, you want to be the most outlandish body horror eldritch nonsense you can imagine. So much opportunity, so much creativity, so much room for absolute mind-altering catastrophes. Might as well double down on it.
For the vaults, home to some of the most twisted, insane, and mind-blowing human experimentation and torture ever imagined. And also, the most fascinating part about this world, without question. 122 individual containment facilities.
Dude, opening a Fallout vault is like the gacha game of the post-apocalypse. Oh boy, I've just got myself a vault. Time to open it and see if I get eldritch monsters or civilized society. Man, I paid $50 for this gacha box of mine, and all I got was radiation.
All constructed by a mega corporation, monetizing human death and suffering, all for their own gain. So today, I'm going to break down every single one we know about, whether that be from games, television, novels, or even comic books. And
I suppose that's kind of the thing, is that what he said there, what we know about, what we've learned from watching the series, and whether that's canon or not, I'm going to leave that up to speculation. The vaults that we know about are just the ones that are quote-unquote documented in canon. We all fully know that Vault Tech, if you've seen anything of the Fallout universe, there are so many more vaults that are either undocumented or at least not on the mainstream list of vaults that we know.
Starting with the most chilled and relaxed vaults and slowly making our way into the single most horrifying and mind-melting scenarios imaginable. Because as any Fallout veteran knows, war never changes.
By the way, I was watching the Fallout series the other day, and the second one of the guys said, war never changes, I was like, oh, Leonardo DiCaprio moment. I get that reference. I get that reference.
You know, if there was one vault I had to live in the entire Fallout universe, it might just have to be Vault 84. Because while later in the video we will be taking a look at some truly horrific things, first we have to start with the most relaxed. And what better way to do this than the little-known vault that's seldom talked about. Originally introduced in the Fallout board game,
Vault 84 was like a baseline, right? It was just a normal vault for normal people to show what a normal society would be like.
A vote was held to exile the most dangerous inhabitant from the bunker, meaning the vault dwellers were constantly on their best behavior year-round.
Because, like, my understanding of the vaults is that most of them ended up being, like, testing grounds for different situations to see what Vault Tech could do with different groups of people that were exposed to different, like, environmental effects. But of course, to get that, you'd need some baseline vaults as well. So there were just some vaults that were just normally there for normal people. And then the rest of them were fucked up beyond belief.
In fear of receiving the vote. And for anyone that did show signs of disorderly conduct, they would be swiftly removed forever. So because of the simple rule and low amount of people being affected at once, this system managed to keep the vault almost perfectly safe over decades. It inspired many families to join community events, to help others, or to give money and things away in order to inspire favor and love from everyone else. And being single or lonely not only meant you were out friends—
I said this in the last Fallout video we watched, by the way. Isn't it so funny that as time is going by, Fallout is becoming less of a satire and parody and more of just a reality? Like and subscribe for existential dread.
but out a potential spot in this lovely vault as well, with you being seen as an outsider. So everyone in the vault had a huge incentive to talk and help others. And this actually resulted in what might be the safest and least tragic vault in the history of the series, because even though it's no longer canon, it still gives us such an interesting psychological look into human beings and potential what-if scenarios. And isn't that what's most fun about vaults in Fallout anyways? Simply hearing about the fun ideas or experiments that could take place, and wondering where
not even
and
once.
how things
99% success rate?
For
You're gonna
me,
miss
the most
every single one of those
interesting part
shots.
about vaults, and by extension the most interesting part about Fallout, is the individual and social implications of each experiment. And really just
So that's what I said in the last video as well. I love the individual story elements that happen outside the main storyline. Like coming across a vault, trying to figure out what happened from the diegetic storytelling and everything else happening in the environment. Like, I love the moment-by-moment elements of a Fallout universe. I may not really play these games as much, but that's the thing that draws me to this universe. There's so much like compelling story arcs you can follow.
What would happen. So I'll make that
Hi,
the
Dazzy.
main focus throughout this entire video. And also for anyone
Overwatch-
wondering,
oh yeah,
that's why I'll
Overwatch
also
2 no
be
longer
including
exists.
non-canon vaults on this list as well.
They did
Because
introduce
even
a
the
guild, though,
imagination
so there's
of it
that.
all can be so fascinating, and it gives us some ideas into what future vaults and new games or shows might look like. However, keep in mind I will point out each vault and whether or
By
not
the way,
it's
am I the only one that thought that the default male character in Fallout 4 looked like Adrian Brody? I can't be the only one.
canon, so you guys
Adrian
can keep
Brody.
track too.
Adrian
Regardless
Brody.
though, even up to modern times in Fallout, this vault is still operating in pristine fashion. Through the simple process of slowly pruning out bad apples, this society is potentially one of the best in the entirety of America. In fact, the only especially tragic episode in the entire vault's history
Dude, why is
actually
he just
has
walking
to
around
do
with
with
an
a
entire
nearby
scrapyard
vault
on his back?
109, which was
That's
an
not power
extremely
armor, that's just
high-class and
The
expensive
whims
area
of the
for
fancy,
affluent
the
individuals,
minds of your
even
fancy,
better
saying,
than
yes, this is
84
armor.
by all accounts. Inside was countless high-class materials and products like Mary May, Ticknoran Fields, or Fallon's, all recognizable brands from the pre-war days that signified wealth and status. However, Vault 109 eventually suffered a catastrophic failure due to an unknown source which caused a radiation leak, resulting in everyone
God,
inside
that's so
perishing
fucked.
or
Even the
becoming
most
flesh-hungry
baseline
ghouls.
vaults were just
And this
fucked
event marked
places
the
to
end
be.
of trade between the two facilities. Yet despite
Which,
this,
if anything, is more compelling to the inadequacies of Vault Tech instead, whether they decided to do that on purpose. Like, having a very baseline vault, but purposely designing it with a inevitable failure just to see what the Vault dwellers would do.
Vault 84 has continued to live strong and flourish, which is especially astounding considering this is maybe one of the only non-control vaults in the entire series that can claim so. It's always been so curious to me why the overseers of every vault in Fallout never really rebelled. After all, having to lead and subject many of your fellow human beings to sick and twisted torture for years on end takes a special kind of evil. But that true sense of evil is exactly what Vault Tech was looking for in their containment facilities, meaning most overseers were handpicked before the Great War began and bombs dropped, and that's why—
You know, that's something that I think the Fallout series, the live action series, has done a really good job of showing, is the dissonance within the hierarchy of the Vault Tech higher-ups. Like seeing how the overseers are either these very devout and diligent overseers, or just corrupt pieces of shit that wear an eye patch. And a Canadian. Ooh.
usually worked out. In fact, in many vaults, subsequent overseers were also handpicked with rigged elections.
Oh yes,
or
no, so
voting
they're already
to
up on my
ensure
YouTube
the
channel.
Experiments could keep going. But in the case of Vault 81, we actually got a look into what could happen when an overseer did in fact stand up for what's right. Originally, the vault was instructed to run experiments on human beings with all sorts of diseases and infections, all in an attempt to make a universal cure that could fix any ailment.
I mean, that's the thing, right? It's obviously a fantasy, so we fully know that if this kind of stuff was in real life, most overseers, a lot of the overseers would probably be like, you know what? This was supposed to be a test facility, but I want to live. I don't want to be part of a scientific experiment. Nah, we're just going to turn this into a normal vault.
And the layout was
Self-preservation
structured in
overrides
two
that,
parts.
but because this is a
main area that
fantasy-
simply was a normal and well-kept vault for all the residents to live in, and a secret sectioned off area as well, where a team of scientists would live and perform experimentation non-stop, pulling people from the main section of the vault to use as guinea pigs. However, when Dr. Olivet, the designated overseer of this vault, learned of this heinous twist in how the experiment would be run, she immediately thought of becoming a whistleblower to reveal the plan. Sadly though, she soon became aware of the fact that many in the United States government were actually helping out Vault Tech, and any sort of attempt to stop them
And
would
you
be
guys
futile.
think that
So instead,
the United
she
States
hatched a
government are the
plan that
good
would
guys?
actually take over
That's
after
the thing in the
vault.
Fallout world. There's no such thing as a good side. There's just different shades of shit. Which is why you have to summarily segregate yourself from society and become your own hierarchical state, separated from governmental regime. We, the people of this vault, stand on our own feet, not dwelled by the merits of the government, but by our own merits and societal hierarchy that we have bastioned in our own light.
Fully became operational. On the morning of the Great War, when she received the call to start the
Actually, no, yeah,
notification
you're
of
kind
staff
of
and
right.
residents
The Fallout
to enter
universe
the
does have a
vault,
lot of
she only
parallels
sent
with the
signal
Warhammer
to the
universe.
residents,
Just
and
maybe not
completely
so-
left out all the scientists on the
well,
message. But despite the
exaggerated
plan
as
starting perfectly,
Warhammer.
3 of the scientists on the staff unit did manage to make it to the vault in time before it was sealed, and quickly made their way to the secret compartment of the vault. Realizing she had no other options, the Overseer simply had to play along with what the scientists were doing with their initial testing on animal subjects like mole rats, but as soon as they were nearing the start of human trials, she quickly locked the secret compartment of the vault and sealed them away. This meant that the scientists would now be trapped for the rest of their lives,
They
but
most
still with
certainly
enough
have
food
Sputnik.
and water
They
to
most
survive,
certainly have.
meaning research would continue. In fact, Overseer Olivet even modified
I always find it funny when people come back into my
assistant
streams from the
Miss Nancy
Warframe
in the
days
vault
and
at one point
get a
to
bit of a
help with the
flashback
lab
with how much things have
research,
changed.
feeling bad for those trapped inside, and still curious about the potential for a cure to every illness, what she originally came to the vault to do. Named Curie, this generic utility robot with female voice programming, originally created from a massive company called General Atomics International before
I get
the
that
war,
reference!
actually continued on the research the scientists had been doing even after their deaths. And this turned out to be a huge win, as decades later, Curie was able to achieve her prime directive and create a universal cure for humanity. So she sent a
Ooh.
message to the main vault of her findings and patiently idled for decades, awaiting a response from the security that never came. Tragically though, by the time the vault door was eventually opened decades later, it was still kept a secret from almost everyone inside. In Fallout 4,
Just like the parallels between our real world, how, hey, by the way, guys, we have a cure for cancer now, and, oh, wait, no, we don't. Wait, did we have a cure for cancer? Ooh, shocker.
when you find this vault, it's still operational.
You
And
guys think
discover
Fallout is a
young boy
fantasy
named
and a
Austin
parody?
Engel, who has recently
Nuh-uh.
witnessed another vault dweller sneak into the
Like
secret
and subscribe for
containment
existential
facility
dread.
that's been barred off. However, tragically, when Austin goes in after him, he gets bit by a mole rat which had previously been experimented on by the scientists when the vault first opened, giving Austin a completely unknown and incurable disease. If you as the sole survivor sneak...
It's called VTuber stupidity. You get infected with VTuber stupidity. Oh no. Well, F in the chat for that person.
your way into the secret portion of this vault
It's,
and find
terminal.
Kiri, she will hand you the last remaining non-expired vial of the universal cure. And you can decide to either use this on yourself, assuming you've also been bit, or save the young child, Austin Engel. It's one of the most harrowing
Did they not
choices
just
in the
recreate it?
series. But still, on this list, the vault sits so high because it's a stark reminder that even one heroic person can save so many lives. And for this vault's entire lineage, almost all of the dwellers have lived on to lead happy lives, unaware of the dark experiment the vault was founded on. Overall, an upbeat story for a vault that could have been so—
You know, one of my favorite story traps within a Fallout game is you from your vault running into other people's vaults. I think that's such a funny little, like, story arc that happens so often, seeing the different, like, cadences that happen from your vault to theirs, and seeing how they react to you, being like, wait, you're from another vault? You went onto the surface? Aw, look, guys, it's a different vault dweller. Let's gawk and stare at them and how silly they are. Haha.
so much worse. And trust me, as we keep making our way down this list, they will be. For those of you that don't know what control vaults are in Fallout, they essentially act as a way to validate the otherwise sick and twisted experiments going on.
See, I know
in the
some
other
baseline
vaults.
stuff about
Rather than
the
killing
vaults and
people
stuff,
for sport or running
gives good
wild
sentiment for
experiments,
understanding what we're
the
talking
control
about.
vaults are simply a normal place meant to maintain a stable society for potentially hundreds of years.
I mean, that's the thing, right? For all intents and purposes, yes, they wanted to perform a lot of experiments, but they also did need society to be upheld. So you would need a number of the vaults to just be normal vaults for people to survive in, so that you could have some level of civilized society after the bombs are dropped and everything. There's just, unfortunately, the proportion of vaults that were seedy, horrifying, terrifying places to be was a little bit disproportionate.
This results in these vaults serving as a way to validate the outcomes of experimentation elsewhere, just like
And
a
yes,
control
the super
in any
mutants are
scientific
basically
experiment.
orcs.
After all, as
The
we know, the
biggest
main purpose of
and the
most of the vaults
bestest.
originally was to run horrific social or scientific tests on unwitting and
Just
innocent
with a little bit
subjects
more
in order
intellect,
for
you know?
Vault-Tec to gain scientific research and learnings that could aid them in creating a new and prosperous world
For a more civilized society, you know what I'm saying?
post the bombs falling hundreds of years later. And maybe one of the best examples of a control vault actually doing its job is Vault 8 from Fallout 2. Set to open around 10 years after the bombs fell,
I might be wrong in saying this, but isn't Fallout 2 getting a remake? Like a modern remake? I remember seeing that somewhere. I might be wrong.
in 2091, the overseer of the vault gave the orders to open the main vault door and release over 200 inhabitants to help rebuild the world. With the aid of their GEC, or Garden of Eden creation kit, a massive terraforming device built from cold fusion that allows vault dwellers to more easily harness the post-nuclear wasteland for themselves, they were
Yes, the parallels between Warhammer, a GEC, or in the Warhammer universe, the Universal Construction Device.
able to found Vault City as one of the main areas we get a run around in and explore in the second game. It's one of the best examples of a Vault experiment and goal not going horribly wrong, and while Vault City is by no means a perfect paradise, by the time we find it in-game in 2241, it's a massive and sprawling city unlike many other places in the
Oh,
wasteland,
yeah,
with
like-
cutting-edge technology.
We see a lot in the Fallout universe of all these places that are dystopic and horrible and grody and filthy, but, you know, I feel like there's not enough sentiment drawn to the places that are actually functional. But I guess that's just because they're not interesting enough. Why would you want to focus on a post-apocalyptic universe and focus on the stuff that's going right? Unless you're planning on showing the stuff going right when it goes wrong. Because that's good storytelling.
And medicine to boot. Sadly though, hundreds of years later, it was also home to rampant slavery and a form of a caste system as well, along with concerning radiation leaks everywhere. And it's a stark reminder of why vault dwellers are often considered the most cowardly people in the
modern
wasteland,
New
because
York?
after coming to the surface, things tend to become more feral and difficult to manage. For many control vaults, simply hiding inside forever, like Vault 84, might actually be the ideal. Nowadays though, Vault 8 is simply used as a storage
See, this is what
facility
happens
and
when you get
medical
fresh
bay
air.
for vault.
As a certified, self-proclaimed NEET, this is why you should stay inside, because that fresh air, it's going to make you go goo-goo bananas and make you have a complete god complex. Just stay indoors. Never see sunlight. Remain a neat and remain as part of your self-contained infrastructure makes life much more manageable.
Vault City, a far cry from its heyday before. Vault
I have
13
time
is
story,
one of
yes.
the most
Not too interested, though.
recognizable in the series, and that's because it's actually where you start out your journey in Fallout 1, and by proxy, Fallout 2 as well. And that's because the second game is actually the only mainline entry that doesn't begin in a vault, instead picking up right from where you left off in the first game. The vault itself is nothing more than a standard control facility meant to
I've never
open
played
up
the
when
first
the
two
Enclave
games.
calls for it. But
Seen
in the
plenty
first
of them,
game, when
though.
you start, the vault is suffering from a massive water chip failure, and multiple different people inside have been sent out into the wasteland in search of a fix.
Just like
When
the
you come
series.
into the picture, though, things have gotten a lot more dire. And now with the facility's water chip having completely failed, the vault only has 150 days left before everyone inside dies. You, as someone called the Vault Dweller, are sent on a mission as the Vault's last hope to go and find a fix. And eventually, you find extra water chips in Vault 12 under Necropolis, a massive
Dude, where are
blue
those
city.
super mutants
But when
getting
you
their
come back and
pants
tell
from?
the Overseer of your deeds,
Like size
he sends you on
XXX.
one
Oh
more
my
mission to
god!
find
Jesus! Fallout 2 graphic jump scare.
out the cause of all of the super mutants you've seen in the wasteland, and this leads you down the path to finding someone called the Master. And for those of you that don't know, the Master was actually a main antagonist from the original Fallout games, who is a massive computer-human-monster hybrid that speaks in hundreds of voices of
Hello,
those he has
Geiger.
enveloped, and wishes to create an
what I
army
mean?
of hyper-intelligent
Body horror.
and strong super mutants to take over the world and bring prosperity. He sends his goons into nearby vaults in order to get fresh and non-
You hear that, guys? This is what good goons can do. This is what gooning gets you when you do it right. Unlike you lot, who are a bunch of goons who don't know how to do nothing other than redacted.
into humans, which he can dose with high amounts of FEV or the forced
what video? It is
evolutionary
called
virus,
Every
hoping to
Fallout
make the
Vault
most
Explained.
capable super mutants possible. FEV in Fallout is actually an artificial virus that was created at one of
Now, this I
WestTech's
remember
top
about.
research divisions before the Great War, and actually works by changing the genotype and phenotype in human beings, quite literally modifying what we can become, and in this case, creating massive hulking super mutant brutes. The reason Vault Dwellers are so good for this is because their DNA has not been tainted by the radioactive wasteland above, meaning it can more easily be manipulated at a cellular level to force mutations without issue. And on top of this, there are actually many strains of the virus as well, which is why super mutants on the East Coast, like in Fallout
Hey, Jax,
3,
thank you for the
are so
raid.
much
Welcome
more
in.
intellectually
We're watching Fallout
inferior
nerd
to
stuff.
their
Enjoying
brothers on
us.
the West Coast who are subject to more advanced strains of FEV. Nonetheless, you eventually take down this monstrosity known as the Master.
God, with all of, like, if it's not for the viruses and if it's not for the terrifying monsters that live in the wasteland, why would you ever want to be in the Fallout? You know when you get those questions like, you have to live in the last game you played? Dude, living in the Fallout universe would be the most actively horrifying thing imaginable. Not just for the viruses, for the monsters, but it's just a fucked up universe to begin with.
In his command center, the cathedral,
Makes our
and
world
return
look
back to
tame
your
by
vault
comparison.
to let them know of the good news. Sadly though, when you arrive, the Overseer refuses to let you in, noting that he is now scared that people inside will see your heroics and want to go into the wasteland themselves, so he turns you away, forcing you to go back into the wasteland on your own, and kicking off the start of Fallout 2. Overall, even though Vault
yeah, I
13
remember
is
that.
so vital to the
Didn't
Fallout
play it, but I know
series
the
as
story.
a whole, being
Go
literally
through all that
where
effort
it
to
all
save the vault, and
began,
you're like, nah,
in the
I can't
grand
let you back
scheme
in,
of
buddy.
things, it isn't actually that bad of a place to live at all. Outside of the water shortage crisis, most people inside lived happy and decent lives, and compared
Dude,
to
the best thing about the Fallout series, by the way, is how accurate they've made the power armor. Did anyone else lose their mind when they saw how good the Commonwealth power armor looked in one of the most recent episodes? I saw that shit and I was like, oh. I near enough came into my pants.
other vaults we will see later on this list, this is without a doubt one of the best you could have lived in after the bombs fell. Vault 76 is now one of the most iconic numbers in the entirety of the franchise, but not for good reason. And that's because this vault is actually where you begin your journey in Fallout 76, the first multiplayer Fallout game, and also, for a lot of people, the worst. On its initial release, this game was riddled with bugs and issues, and for most people was not only completely unplayable, but also lost so much of what made Fallout great in the first place. Nowadays though,
many of
after
the reasons why I will never play
patches
Fallout
and years of
76.
work, the game is
Other than
actually
the fact
pretty
it's a
good,
gratuitous microtransaction
albeit
slop
different.
game.
But nonetheless, the vault itself was one of 17 designated control vaults for Vault-Tec and was home to some of America's best and brightest, including top students from Vault-Tec University and the former White House Chief of Staff. What made this structure especially interesting though, is that it actually is, as far as we know up to this point, one of the earliest vaults to actually open its doors, and in terms of games and the shows, it's by far the earliest point in the timeline that we get to see. Because after only 20 years post the bombs falling and the start of the Great War, the happy day of reclamation, as it was called, began, and the doors swung open ready for the inhabitants to reach.
That animation actually bugs me. Why does his hip go down like that? It looks like this was animated by a college student. Nothing like Bethesda quality, everybody.
Claim the world and make it better. And maybe the most ironic part of it all is that compared to every other Fallout game, 76 looks the least destroyed and most lush of them all. But that's probably in large part due to it being set in
that's kind of what I kind of get, is that
region of
your
West
experience in the
Virginia,
Fallout universe
as
very much
opposed to a
depends
major
when you come out of the vault.
metropolitan area, which would have been a major focus of nuclear targeting systems. But seriously, look at Fallout 3, which takes place 200 years after the bombs fell, and it still looks like they literally just dropped yesterday, compared to 76, where you were playing about 25 years after the fallout, and it looks pristine. It's kind of funny. Part of the reason, though, is that radiation doesn't actually
that kind of depends
affect
where
fauna,
you come out of the
meaning the
vault.
overgrown landscape in a non-heavily targeted area like this would potentially actually make a lot of sense, like we also see around the Chernobyl nuclear zone in our real lives. Regardless though, Vault 76 is still without a doubt one of the most happy and tame stories in the entire series, with so many facilities in the actual vault itself for having fun,
What a
eating
name.
great meals, and just enjoying others and their company. Or in other words, a great vault full of amenities and nice people alike that then gets set loose in one of the best and most beautiful places still left on Earth. Vault 111 is another very iconic location in the series because it serves as a starting vault in Fallout 4. Right before the Great
You notice
War,
how all
you as
these
a
good
player
vaults, once you
character
start
find
in the
yourself
games.
living in the nearby town
Imagine
called
if you start one of these
Sanctuary
games,
Hills, and
but
on
it's
the
in
day
one
that
of the
bombs
bad
start
vaults.
dropping, you
Dude,
rush
that
yourself
would actually be such a great storytelling device that rather than starting in a good vault, you start in one of the experimental vaults instead. And you escape from, like, the experiments, and that's, like, the progenitor of your story arc.
and your family.
I think that'd be
over
really
the
cool
vault
to have a
and
bit of a
hurry your
shake
way
up for
inside
Fallout.
right as a nuclear bomb detonates
You know,
nearby
whenever we
and
get
almost
Fallout
kills
5
all of you. Inside
in
the vault,
20
an
years'
experiment
time.
was being conducted on cryogenic pods and stasis to hopefully
Still
lend some
waiting on the new
important
Skyrim,
research
the
into this
new
key
Elder Scrolls
area
game,
for
Todd.
humanity's future. But when you first arrive, you were told that these pods are actually for decontamination, after which you and your family, along with other vault dwellers, are locked inside and trapped as you pass out inside. Per the initial vault's operating procedures, the doors were to remain shut to the vault for at least 180 days. But after this time had elapsed, no signal was given from the outside for staff to leave, and now with a low amount of food and water, they all started demanding the overseer open the door to let them out to scavenge. Refusing to do so though, the overseer caused a full-on uprising from security and support staff that took over and tried to unseal the door. In retaliation, the overseer then put the vault on full lockdown and demanded all food, weapons, and medicine be handed over, after which no full logs of the events of what happened next even are known. But the vault's history does pick up 150 years later, when a nearby
I did find the whole, like, the whole, story element here of, like, you presuming that when you see this scene, you're getting out, like, days after, when in reality it's been years, was such a, like, a red herring, and I like, I'll give him credit. It was a story beat I did not see coming.
high-tech
Fallout 4
society
wasn't
called
terrible.
the Institute
It really wasn't.
send some of their
Probably
men
the
to
only Fallout
retrieve
game
the
I played
player
through to
character's
completion
baby from
in a short
inside
space
the
of time.
cryopod, as it will serve as a perfectly pure, non-radiated human being to base their Generation 3 synthetic machine-human hybrids on. When these agents come into the vault and wake you up, though, your spouse does not hand over the baby, and is shot as you watch helplessly in your cryopod nearby, after which they take your baby son and turn on your pod again, forcing you to sleep. You then awake 50 years later, now with the vault completely empty and over 200 years after the
50
Great
years
War,
later, yes,
on a
but
journey
you don't
to
know
go
that.
find your son. Overall, while Vault 111 itself isn't thematically the most interesting or horrifying by any means, the story behind it and what it leads to definitely are, and serves as a very interesting start to one of the games that really leaves a mark. If you were to ask most people what the best beginning to a Fallout game is, or even just one of the best beginnings to a game period, they would without question say Vault 101 from Fallout 3.
Oh, yeah!
And also, for any of you who are curious, the actual answer to that question is Prey, but Fallout 3 has a cool start too. Regardless,
think I played
though,
Fallout
the
3 in,
experiment
like,
Vault 101
10
was a
years.
simple one. It was never to be opened. The overseer in this vault was instructed that the door should always remain shut no matter what, and unlike many other vaults, there was never an intention here to repopulate the wasteland. The only goal was to see what would happen to a society that never saw true sunlight again. But to do this, the overseer at any given time would have to
Like I said, an entire vault of needs. Give them World of Warcraft, give them computers, give them an excessive amount of Cheetos and Mountain Dew, and your experiment is good to go.
Mass hysteria about what the outside world was like. Children and adults were taught that the world had been
Mr.
falling
Aussie,
into
thanks for the
complete
follow. Welcome to the
chaos,
Kari Mansion.
and simply stepping outside would result in instant death. And extreme measures like a police state and fake broadcasts of the outside world were even made to sell the reason why no one could leave. However, as time went on, some overseers did start to secretly send scouting parties to the outside to get information, and this resulted in the people inside the vault even having discussions with people in nearby towns like Megaton. These occasional exits from the vault resulted in creatures like rad roaches making their way inside, and this eventually led to a full-on infestation crisis occurring, during which your father escapes from the vault, leaving you behind, after which the overseer's daughter comes to you and tells you you need to get out there before they kill you looking for answers. So you narrowly escape this now chaotic vault and make your way to the outside, met with one of the most haunting yet strangely beautiful moments in the Fallout series history. Now on a journey to go find your lost father and discover a world
an entire
that for
vault
your
of
whole
anime,
life, you
video
were told
games,
was
and junk
completely
food.
devoid of
Heaven.
happiness. But the
Absolute
more
heaven.
you search around the wastelands of DC, you start to realize that maybe being kept in your nice little vault with safety and food wouldn't have been such a bad thing after all. Located just east of Vault 13 in New California, Vault 15 is another location we get to explore.
Fallout games are the biggest depiction of like going outside and interacting with people is a horrifying experience.
Place over 50
if I
years,
go outside away from my video games, anime, and junk food, and start interacting with people, they all want to kill me.
Just to see
No, I stay inside. Video
Whereas
games,
most
please.
other
Video
vaults
games and
tended
anime.
to be homogenous with very similar groups of people, 15 flew in the face of all of this. And because of this, quickly after the bombs fell and the vault inhabitants made their way to this facility to get locked away, many tribes and groups started to assemble. This resulted in lots of infighting and turmoil between the people in the vault, and after overcrowding started to become a major issue, a large portion of the vault residents decided to
You mean like in the live action series where there's a tribe of people in one of the main vaults that's like, yeah, we're all people who fucked our family. Haha. God, what a story device. What a plot device. Yep. Let's make a club for all the people that fucked their siblings. Dude, the writers must have been on drugs or something.
actually leave, taking the Gek with them in the process. This group of vault dwellers is actually the initial founding members of Shady Sands, the same destroyed city we see in the TV show and Metropolis from the games, which in turn fostered the eventual founding of the New California Republic, or NCR, one of the most notable government-like entities that has actually succeeded since the bombs fell. Other groups from the vault, on the other hand, formed raider or bandit tribes that would kill and steal for survival. And an even smaller group decided to stay in the vault even after it had been stripped of resources, assuming it would be more safe. Maybe most surprising of all, though, is just how crucial this vault and its initial people have become to the Wasteland, being the initial home and birthplace for so many factions and ideologies that even decades later would define the Wasteland we know in Fallout. And it goes to show that even extremely diverse groups of people assembled together, while cause for initial concern and violence, can cascade into truly great things in the long term because of being forced to see so many sides. I've always been a sucker for building and crafting in games I really enjoy, and for that reason, I actually am a big fan of Vault 88 from Fallout 4. You see, added in a DLC, this vault serves as more of a construction playground for the player rather than a normal vault. In lore, this facility built just below the Quincy Quarries in Boston served as a test site for various prototype devices that were targeted for distribution.
By the way, chat, definitely not me being a gooner, by the way, but definitely wasn't me that modded my game to turn the Fallout guy into a sexy, a sexy woman with fat tits and wide hips. Ha ha ha. No, I would never do something like that. I'm not a gooner. What are you talking about? Shut up.
As a test site for various prototype devices that were targeted for distribution to other vaults. Vault 88 itself was never actually finished though, with instead only the entrance and security and reactor rooms being completed and furnished. Inside though, you will find a massive open cave room and network of nearby zones, all of which are completely open to the player character to design in whatever way they see fit,
all the cultured people in my chat know exactly what I'm talking about.
Just the way
just smile and wave, boys, smile and wave.
Without question, one of the least scary and unassuming places in the entire Fallout ensemble. It also might just be the
yes, exactly, only surmounted but then by the other most based mod where you turn everyone into a femboy. But femboyification isn't a gooning tendency, it's a life choice, okay?
One that you spend the most time in, depending on the type of player you are. Because I know for myself, I thoroughly enjoyed my time in Vault 88, making my own little vault so homey. And finally, to end off this first tier of Fallout vaults, the least horrible...
I will say, especially Fallout 4 with base building, and especially after watching Reggie's video... It might be one of the reasons why the Fallout 4 became so enjoyable. The building mechanics, as janky as they are, might be some of the most cathartic elements in the entire game.
And also nicest, I wanted to quickly go over 12
well, yes, I do want to
78
my 78
vaults,
turret.
many of
Thank
which
you.
are non-canon, but still all have interesting or strange experiments to go over before diving into the truly insane stuff. Because with most of
no one ever who decides to take building seriously in a Fallout game, I'll just spend 5 minutes building my base. You blink and then it's been 5 days and your wife has left you. Your dog has eaten the goldfish. But at least you got a fancy looking base. Like browsing Reddit. You blink and all of a sudden time has passed and you don't know why you're so lonely anymore.
These, we have almost no information on them besides the small experiments that took place, so most of this
you know
be
what,
pure
Abake, that is exactly the reason if I ever get Fallout 78, I would only want to get it just for the building mechanics, because I loved building in Fallout 4.
speculation. In Vault 55, nothing was out of the ordinary, except for the fact that absolutely no entertainment tapes were provided. In most other vaults, a large selection of movies, shows, or general entertainment videotapes were provided to residents that could then be played on any TV. This helped to pass the time and keep people occupied in what otherwise were extremely boring and mundane day-to-day lives.
You want to do this experiment in our real world? Take away TikTok. Take away people's mobile phones. This experiment will be done en masse the second you take away people's phones. As a society, we are so heavily reliant on our phones, with the constant source of dopamine and serotonin from being so easily distracted that our attention spans are cooked. You take that away from our society in the modern year, and the entire planet will go to shit.
But this inability to escape from reality and simply enjoy some good entertainment was not a
that, or just force every single person to play anything made by Activision, and you'll have the same experience. Nobody wants to play anything Activision related these days. Basically a form of sadism and torture.
possibility in Vault 55. And because of this, it's been assumed that chaos did eventually break out, as it was the only thing that could happen that would keep people entertained and satiated. If you thought that experiment was bad though, you definitely would not—
I know, I don't like talking about Mr. Beast, but did you guys see that video where Mr. Beast stayed in a padded room with no stimuli by himself for like a couple of weeks or something? Like, humans are so craven for stimuli. If you don't have anything to entertain yourself or give you stimuli, you do kind of go crazy. At least that's my excuse when I'm not able to sit at my computer for more than 5 minutes every couple of days.
have wanted to be a part of Vault 56. Because in this vault, instead of all entertainment,
like, people legitimately will go crazy without any form of stimuli.
Only one was provided, and that was a particularly untalented comedian doing his sets over and over again. It's been widely theorized that the inhabitants of this vault went crazy and rebelled even faster than the dwellers in 55, as they simply grew deranged and crazy, having to watch one man tell bad jokes over and over again with no place to hide.
Oh wow, it's like going to an anime convention.
This occurs during our teenage years with our fathers telling dad jokes, but for the unlucky people assigned to this vault, the torture was something they never could escape. In Vault 36, the fruit extruders meant to supply a rich and varied diet to the residents instead only produced a thin and disgusting-looking watery gruel. The residents would have been very annoyed at first,
like the stuff
but over
out
time,
of the
likely
Matrix.
Things wouldn't have been that bad. Besides the malnourished bodies and lack of proper nutrition, on top of no real sunlight. And as we know from real-life experiments, eating the same thing over and over every day can lead to many ailments and infections that can become life-threatening if not treated. But compared to a lot of other vaults out there, these residents had nothing to complain about. In Vault 42, every single light source and light bulb had no more than
the one
40
where everyone turned into vegetables. Literally, metaphorically, and spiritually.
watts provided to it. And while this sounds pretty unassuming, living in such a dim and depressing environment for so long would have driven many residents crazy. Night vision would have naturally improved due to so much darkness exposure, and the people inside would simply have had to have learned to survive with very little light at all. But once again, another experiment where, as bad as it sounds, trust me, it's going to get a lot worse. In Vault 53, the equipment of almost everything inside was designed to break down every few months, but only enough to still allow for somewhat easy repairs. The equipment was meant to induce a large amount of stress in all of the dwellers, and this mission it managed to accomplish easily, as many people inside constantly lived in fear that something new was going to break once again, and their harmonious lives would be thrown into chaos.
Honestly, I feel that being a VTuber. The constant threat and anxiety that something with my setup is going to break and ruin my ability to make content is a constant anxiety. And then I always have a mild autistic fit every time something does break down. Oh man, I gotta get behind my computer. I gotta try and fix this shit. Oh, fuck, man.
Surprisingly, living in constant fear that bad things may happen, even if those things are nothing more than simple repairs, can actually start to drive our human minds mad with anticipation, and it's theorized that many in the vault rebelled and left at some point.
Time story. Think about it this way. Imagine you've just fixed something, and they're like, okay, like with me, right? I had a problem with my computer, and I fixed it. And then literally a day later, the same problem occurred, even though there was no reason why it should. After I had my mild autistic breakdown, I sat there and thought, nah, that's bullshit. That's fucking bullshit. And that was only one time it happened. Imagine if that was your constant existence.
Vault 29, only children under the age of 15 were allowed inside, with all of their parents being refused entry and sent to other vaults. And on top of this, it was filled to the brim, meaning the entire facility was nothing but an army of children running around and screaming. This would have quickly resulted in
very apt way to describe Twitter. An entire society of man babies kicking and screaming at the slightest thing.
the oldest and most mature of the group taking leadership positions, trying to learn how to be adults, while most of the other children perished due to an inability to protect one another. The only other big thing we know about this vault as well is that Harold actually stems from it. And for those of you who don't know, Harold is a recurring character in the series who, on a mission in the first game's timeline, comes into contact with a large dose of FEV that transforms him into a monstrosity in the second game and a literal talking tree in the third. Considering that he started out as a child alone in a vault with other children though, becoming a talking tree actually is quite the accomplishment. In Vault 79, corresponding to the atomic number of gold 79, the gold reserves of the entire United States, and eventually the Enclave later, were being stored. It was home to up to 100...
I don't understand why that you would want to store gold in an apocalyptic wasteland. Like, sure, from the mechanical side of it, it's great to engineer with, but when the ecosystem goes out of place and you've got no hierarchy, gold's value is literally only there for its like inherent value of what society tells you it's worth. I mean, sure, engineering with is fine, but I feel like gold is like such a... Any kind of like currency goes out the window the second society collapses. Seems like a very blasé thing to barter in at that stage.
120 dwellers.
Valoran,
it was the home place for
Transcal,
gold that was secretly transferred from Fort Knox originally to inside this vault. In Fallout 76, we actually get to learn more about this vault and its history as well.
Literally, shiny metal. But why is it worth anything?
Power struggles to either
Can I bludgeon someone with it?
Or actors trying to gain wealth for themselves. And in game, we actually get to decide where to put some of these reserves to help certain factions against one another. In Vault 70, the jumpsuit
it's a
extruders
fancy
were sent
game
to
world.
fail
Of course,
after
the suspense
6
of
months,
disbelief and
likely being
everything.
a catalyst for the vault dwellers to leave the facility in what would have been Fallout Van Buren, the original cancelled Fallout 3 project from Interplay, before the IP was bought by Bethesda and they made the third installment in the series instead. The vault was also said to be home to 3 Garden of Eden creation kits that would have been the original stomping ground of the people that would eventually found New Jerusalem, a sprawling metropolis.
Batman, I see you got yourself a giant penny. Mind if I use it and buy a giant can of Coca-Cola? I'm not gonna crush you with it, Batman. I'm gonna crush you with your giant can of Coca-Cola.
In the wasteland. And while we don't know much more about this vault at all, it is curious to think that in another timeline, it would have been one of the most important in the series. In Vault 44, a secret section of the vault was home to a team of scientists performing extremely dangerous experiments on creatures to study the effects. In order to keep them contained, large pins and electrical chains were used, which eventually drew so much power from the entire vault that it all short-circuited. And some of
Giant electrical bondage? Sign me up!
the creatures...
Also, I realize that this entire vault has very much my color palette right now. Guys, I promise you I am not a vegetable monster. I am a slime girl. Just because I'm green does not make me a vegetable. The fact I have no brain does. Eat your vegetables.
And massive insects alike escaped,
Like and subscribe for dietary
balance.
balance.
Vault dying off. One scientist inside even tried to contact Vault Tech to relay the experiment results, but none of the communication ever got through, and the facility was left to rot, with so many interesting findings about the animals of Fallout we may never get to find out. In Vault 27, the facility was deliberately extremely overcrowded, with 2,000 people assigned to enter a space that could only comfortably maintain a few hundred. Inside, fights and riots
this one's horrifying.
broken out, with the vault's food and water supplies being used in record time. Gangs would have
See, this is where things are going to start to get a little bit like, uh-oh. Like, this one especially, having a vault that was designed for like a couple hundred, but having 1,000 or more in there. God, the Fallout, the Vault Tech were just absolutely diabolically megalomaniacs.
To maintain order, and those
resub.
deemed too old or sick would have been ostracized and left to die in the corners of the vault, now filled with dead bodies. And as time went on and resources became more and more scarce, a rationing system would have been formed with those at the top of the hierarchy taking the most for themselves. And likely, this wouldn't have been able to keep going for long, as over time more people would
I don't see why this would have needed to be a test, because I feel like this, as of itself, would have been learned. You would have learned enough about this just by modern society, even without needing to be in a vault. Overpopulation? Just take a look at any Eastern country.
and escape or kill off one another without a second thought. In Vault 17, not much is known about this facility at all, but what we do
I'm
know
sorry,
is
yeah,
that in
guys, get past the chapter here,
2154,
please.
the Master had
Good vibes
invaded
that
this
way.
vault in order to get non-radiated human specimens for his master plan, one of which was
Honestly,
Lily,
evil,
a Night
evil
King
Beast,
super
I totally
mutant
get
from
that.
Fallout
Being in
New Vegas.
being in an
Vault
overcrowded
6,
vault would
every day
be
a small amount of
horrifying just for the
radiation would be
social
pumped into
aspect.
the ventilation systems, which would have slowly turned everyone inside into
Claustrophobia as
feral
well.
ghouls, with the remaining humans being ripped to shreds. Honestly, this vault would have been pretty gruesome and could be lower on the list, but as I stated before, the last part of the first tier is all of these vaults that we have so little information on that are just pure speculation to go by. So now, let's start diving into the much more crazy vaults, the ones that you're all here for, and from this point on, buckle up, because it's about to get really weird.
Uh-oh. Wild and wacky. Okay, I cannot wait for the vault where it's all inhabited by a guy and his clones. That's one I've seen enough about.
If you haven't already heard of them, Vault 68
Or the one vault
and
with one man
69
filled with
are maybe
puppets.
the most wild stories in the entirety of the Fallout series. Originating from the now non-canon Fallout Bible written by Chris Avalon,
Gary,
they were home
yes.
to some truly sick
Gary!
experiments. In Vault 68, the entire dwelling was staffed with 999 men and 1 woman, while in Vault 69, there were 999.
I want to believe that Vault 69 being nothing but women and 1 man was done on purpose. Yeah, let's all get it out of our system with a collective nice. So what you're saying is Vault 69 was basically Konosuba with Kazuma being chased around by giant orc women.
Woman and 1 man, all adults in each. These vaults would have been subject to immense difficulty in staying alive, along with countless inbreeding. But even though we don't have any actual specifics on what happened in the vaults, we can guess as to what went on. In Vault 68, immediate infighting and power jockeying would have taken place, with only the most fierce amongst the male population getting a chance to actually have children of their own. Around the clock, non-stop each year, the one female would need to remain pregnant, immediately
Ugh.
fornicating again after giving birth in order to try
Disgusting.
and repopulate this dying vault.
Well, I will say the one with 999 men, let's face it, that problem will solve itself very quickly just because everyone will become gay. Don't even tell me I'm wrong. Man, why try and fight for the attention of the one woman when butt stuff? Oh, okay, so we got the femboys and the twinks on one side, and the dominant alpha males on the other side. Butt stuff. Butt stuff solves everything.
Any baby-born male would immediately be deemed useless and killed off or used as slave labor, and any baby-born female would be guarded with the utmost care until reaching an age where she too could join the breeding pool.
Ugh.
The society would have been structured in a hierarchical and
disgusting to think
tyrannical
about.
manner, with only the most
Good job,
mentally and
Fallout.
physically strong
Good job
male
instilling a sense of
specimens
existential
maintaining control,
dread.
likely with many splinter factions and gangs forming to try and grab any sense of power. For the initial woman and any born thereafter, this experiment would become a never-ending hell of having to deal with violent men killing each other to retain power and dominance. And there would have been absolutely no time to confide in anyone about anything outside of sexual or survival endeavors. And this likely would result in what would have been a quick downfall of the entire vault at some point. For the one man in Vault 69, on the other hand, he would be living what many men would consider their dream life. Because he was the only
The man in Vault 69 is living every harem anime male protagonist's wet fantasy. God damn. Like, most of us can only dream about being the one character surrounded by a harem of anime women. That man in Vault 69, though? Lucky bastard.
access to sperm in the entire vault, in order to maintain their population, multiple women would have to step up and become pregnant via his very likely awkward moves, meaning he would maintain a literal army of wives as he created hundreds of sons and daughters. On the other hand as well though, because of the societal structure and power now immediately gained from the woman—
The thing is, the dynamic between those two is kind of crazy, because the one with the one woman, at least the gene pool would be much more diverse, but the one with the one man, Dude, that inbreeding is going to create some... You won't need to worry about ghouls coming in or mutants coming in, because the inbreeding, you're going to have mutants within 2 generations.
And family upbringings and customs would likely change fast, resulting in structures likely very foreign from anything we know now. And because of this gender imbalance, the woman would either treat the men horribly and force them to do work, or they would revere them as golden symbols since they were the only way for reproduction to happen in the vault. Sadly though, without any other men nearby to boast about his accomplishments, this lone survivor would likely grow tired of these frivolous escapades and, due to demands from the woman, create a sperm bank which the society could tap into to produce more offspring at any time from willing females. Infighting here would also probably eventually break out from disagreements between the population of women, but likely would not
an
be as
overarching
violent
element
as
of
in
any
Vault
of these
68,
vaults.
full of pissed off and rejected men.
Unless you have
And in
great
another way,
homeostasis
Vault
of
69
balance,
would have been a
it's
paradise
going to be
for
like
the woman,
infighting
free from the
and gangs
bullshit
just
of
form
most men nowadays.
would just form so
Either
quickly.
way though, both of these vaults give
Whether
us a
that's
look
like
into how truly
population
unbelievable
misbalance,
some of the
environmental
vault experiments
misbalance.
could have been, and it really makes you start to wonder about how something like
There needs to be a
this
balance
would
of everything
actually
to keep
play
things
out in real
properly
life,
functional.
after all.
It only takes
Do you know
one
what
thing
the
out of
coolest
balance to
vault
screw
in
everything else
Fallout
up.
history is? It's not one full of ghouls and super mutants, or one of the popular ones you've heard about from videos on Fallout 3 in New Vegas. No, it's actually a vault that never saw the light of day, that was cut from the script before the game even released. Referred to as Vault 120 and now recovered files in the base game of Fallout 4, this wholly underwater vault would have been part of a questline called 20 Leagues Under the Sea, and would have seen us as the player
Bioshock Rapture? Huh.
character meeting with a submarine captain named Zhao, who would have taken us to this fully aquatic megastructure. Inside, the vault would have been staffed with multiple people, but inside the walls, something strange was going on. Some of the lights would have been broken while you navigated the more secluded parts of the vault in pure darkness, as the sounds of the massive ocean around you swept across the bow at all times. As you walk through the walls made of glass as fish
Dude, I would
swam
love to have played
around
the
you,
DLC.
certain parts of the structure would fall apart and flood, including at one point you potentially getting a diving power suit and venturing out into the giant ocean in search of something. And there
Thanks
would
for
have
all
been
that.
countless terminal entries and people to talk to about the history of this strange place, which would have taken most of its inspiration from the popular BioShock series.
That's what I
to boot.
thought.
But maybe most weird of all, in the hidden Fallout 4 files that revealed this cancelled vault to us, we also see the overseer to this vault would have been a gargantuan squid. How this would have worked, we have no idea, but my guess is maybe an experiment was being done to combine aquatic creatures with people by attaching a human brain to a squid, and this is why the monster
sense to me.
would have been an overseer. Overall though, without question, I think this has to be one of the coolest vault ideas in the entire Fallout series.
No, agreed.
And it's
I
almost
don't think I've ever
criminal
heard
that
of this
was
one before
cut
either.
from the 4th game. I'm really hoping that at some point in the future, we'll finally get to see this idea come to light. Because the potential for lore and cool technology combined with a top secret vault doing heinous research deep underwater
Just
is
clipping out
basically
bounds.
any Fallout fan's wet
Fish.
dream. And it's a struggle to even come up with ideas with more potential than that of Vault 120. Located just below the Hawthorne Medical
Vault
Laboratories
4,
in Los
yes, we know
Angeles,
this one.
California, Vault 4 from Season 1 of the Fallout TV show is one of the most insane and wild ever imagined. Originally revealed publicly to the American people before the bombs dropped by none other than famous actor Cooper Howard, otherwise known as the Ghoul from the TV show, Vault 4 claimed it would be a paradise where everyone inside would be a scientist held back by no restrictions. A society formed by the principles of the scientific method led by visionaries in the industry. There were even extensive
Oh, a vault filled with nothing but scientists. Well, it only takes one Hans Gruber level of idiot to be like, well, everyone else is making regular science. I want to make mad science. Hans, did you make a thermal nuclear device when we told you that we just wanted to make hats for mice? No, I did not do that. What are you talking about? Hans, I can literally see it behind your back. No, this is not a thermal nuclear device. It is a hat. See, I put it on my forehead. Hans, your forehead is melting. No, it's just a funny quirk. Hans, you are literally turning into a ghoul.
trials and advertisements done in this vault for over 5 years leading up to the day the bombs fell. But once the nukes started dropping, the vault was immediately sealed. Inside, lead scientist and overseer Cassandra Hawthorne oversaw extensive human genetic and mutation experiments.
Watch out,
but
there's a
order to
Canadian in
actually
this
find
scene.
A group of people to experiment on, they started to let in small amounts of survivors in the wasteland, luring them in with promises of safety without them knowing that they actually would be live human specimens to experiment on. This resulted in numerous birth defects, like horns or limbs growing right out of babies' heads, or people even being mutated.
I will say, one of the things the series does the best above all else is getting across the vibe of the vaults. When they go into Vault 4, like seeing how everything is functioning, I was like, damn, dude, it's like a live action version of the video games. So cool.
To only have one eye, like a cyclops.
And I suppose that's kind of what the series should be commended for the most. Sure, there's some weird narrative choices they've made, but they have been very authentic to the source material in terms of theming. Like, the way that everything looks, at least. Like, when I saw the Deathclaw appear for the first time, dude, I near enough came in my pants. Those Deathclaws are mwah. So, because that's how you do a live-action adaptation of something. We've all seen enough adaptations of games and other things where they just bastardize the base concept, and it's like, oh, you're telling us that's supposed to be a thing? Well, that doesn't look like anything like the thing that we know it from. Look at the World of Warcraft movie. Prime example. All you had to do to make a movie out of a game is to make it look like the game. And you ruined it!
Terrifying of all, some of the test subjects were actually forced to mate with other radiation-resistant species, which even resulted in the creation of some creatures we see in the series nowadays, like the Gulpers. In one heinous experiment, a woman was impregnated with irradiated animal DNA, after which she gave birth to a school of baby
Can you
Gulpers,
name me any other
which
game
then ate her
adaptations or
alive,
anime
tearing her
adaptations that were
from
just
limb to
terrible?
limb in a massive pool of blood
Too many to
which
count.
formed around her. Eventually, though, karma would befall these evil doctors, as these now new and dangerous monsters they had created rebelled and killed many of the scientist overlords that had tested and abused them endlessly.
Death Note? Oh, absolutely.
This itself led to a full-on counter-rebellion inside the vault, where many of the test subjects originating from the surface rose up and took control away from the main scientists, after which they instituted a new policy where they would allow democratic votes for letting in refugees from the outside world to help them survive, giving back to a world that had taken so much from them. And for years they continued on this journey in harmony, even after the nuking of Shady Sands nearby, where vault dwellers and refugees alike would live in the vault and forge around in the wasteland to maintain the vault and its functions. In the Fallout TV show, Lucy and Maximus actually stumble
the
upon
Prince
the
of
vault
Persia
during
movie.
this period,
That wasn't
where
a
they
bad
discover
one.
the remnants of strange
It wasn't
genetic
great, but
mutations
it wasn't
now
bad.
carried
It's only
down
better
through
than most
multiple
out there.
generations, along with discovering the infamous level
Jake
12 of the
Gyllenhaal.
vault, where previous inhabitants who were experimented on extensively are being held in cryo chambers to keep them alive until new technology progress can be made to save them from their eternal torture. On this level, we also get a glimpse at some of the horrid human-creature hybrids and other experimentation that was taking place. And more than anything, it goes to show that sometimes science too can let a group of people who will stop at nothing to make technological and biological progress means that along the way,
You know, I think this
human
is
morals
something
and
that
dignity can simply be
I get
stripped
with
away,
like any
all in the name of
franchise that's
something
been
we
around for a
usually
long
think
time
of
with an
as good,
extensive lore to it
science.
is a lot of
Despite
it just
how
comes
much
down
good
to your
these people can
interpretation of the
do,
lore itself.
Sometimes when given no restraints,
Different interpretations
their
are sometimes
ideals of
hard to
progress
really
can also result in nothing
follow along
but
with.
pain and suffering too. Because
Figuring
in
out
the
what's
world of
canon, it's more
Fallout,
about just enjoying
as
what's
bad as the
presented, I
giant
feel.
corporations like Vault-Tec are, sometimes even just the more inconspicuous individuals, those focused on making a better society, can actually tear it down the most. And it's a perfect analogy for how the problems in Fallout stem not only from a broken society, but a broken sense of individualism too. Nonetheless, Vault 4 has some of the most insane stories in the entire Fallout series, and shows just how too much of anything
I wonder how that man
can be
smells.
a bad thing.
Probably
While
terrible
Fallout
because I never
Tactics
shower.
is no longer considered canon in the Fallout universe, it still did give us a look into one of the coolest Vault ideas out there, and also one that more than likely will eventually be canon based on the name. Vault Zero, constructed into the Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado, was home to essentially the main operational vault and base, where most of the pre-war United States genius
In my opinion, the bombs falling and killing the old world was needed. In the Fallout universe, right? In the Fallout universe? You mean in the Fallout universe, yeah? Smile?
And leadership could be housed. Inside, people were put into cryogenic stasis pods similar to Vault 111, and their brains were removed from their body, all being hooked up into one massive supercomputer called the Calculator. The machine was supposed to function as a mastermind of sorts that would serve as a computational device to best figure out how to nurture human society into post-war greatness. But due to budget cuts in the Department of Defense during the Vault's construction, several important backup systems were not added to the neural links, and this eventually led the Calculator itself to become corrupted and begin a so-called pacification protocol, where now the supercomputer's main directive was to purge the wasteland of all life and kill all humans without question. In Fallout Tactics, as the player character, the warrior, you and the Brotherhood of Steel must work to stop this fearsome machine at all costs. And while this is now no longer fully canon, the events in Vault Zero definitely make you think about what most of the pre-war leadership in the Enclave or inside certain vaults must be doing. And as we know, there's been tons of lore in this series about what's really going on, ranging from Vault Tech dropping the bombs as implied in Season 1 of the show, to the Enclave or United States government using the vaults as experiments to help them in long-form space travel to colonize other planets in a previously cancelled Interplay version of a Fallout cinema adaptation. But whatever turns out to be true in the lore eventually, it's vaults like Vault Zero.
And that's where the biggest crux comes into it. Figuring out what is and isn't canon in the mind of Todd Howard and Bethesda's universe, you're never gonna get a true answer. I mean, someone in my chat just said it a second ago. The fact that the Halo TV series, as good as it, the Fallout series being as good as it is, it's all up to interpretations. Like, when your universe gets as big as it is, not even the developers will know what is and isn't canon after a while.
Which give us a great look into the twisted minds behind all the madness and how they would stop at nothing to achieve pure power and domination while cutting corners to get there. Among the pantheon of most recognizable Fallout vaults of all time, without question, somewhere near the top would be Vault 108 from Fallout 3. Affectionately known as the Gary Vault by most players.
Here we go! It's Gary time! Gary!
Hidden hideaway in the middle of the capital wasteland is more than meets the eye. When you first enter inside, you are met with gruesome scenes of blood and decay, along with some dead bodies, all of one man named Gary, all with different numbers behind their name. And shortly after this, you stumble upon an alive version of the same man, accompanied by many of his other brethren, all shouting Gary at the top of their lungs and looking to try and kill you in a manic rage. It's one of the most absurd, sad, and almost funny vaults in the entire franchise, and it all comes down to what happened inside years before. You see, Vault 108 was meant to house 500 residents for just under 40 years, but was also designed so that in year 20, most of the vault's power supply would fail. Along with this, all standard positions of power were left unfilled, instead to be chosen by the Overseer themselves, and the Overseer selected to start the project was someone with a rare form of cancer and only 3 years left to live. Essentially, the vault was designed to fail from the beginning, but even more interestingly, in those early years, an experiment began to take place in human cloning. Scientists in the vault began testing with highly new tech for human cloning trials, and their subject they chose to test with was a man named Gary. But with each iteration of him that they cloned, the clones would simply shout the word Gary and act very aggressively towards everyone inside. So because of this, the clones were all kept in a containment facility.
Oh, there goes Gary again, being a quirky little bastard.
Number 54,
that Gary,
and rose up against their captors and took over the vault, slaughtering everyone inside and driving the rest of the survivors outside of the vault. When you arrive as the Vault Dweller in Fallout 3, the vault is now nothing but a horrible murder scene of the past, with an army of this one man Gary shouting his name as they chase you with baseball bats.
Takes the whole definition of a one-man army to another level.
Remnants of the past, like a fully barricaded woman's bathroom or blood smears on the wall, and tell the harrowing story of this vault that was losing power and the people inside hiding in darkness from this army.
Yeah, I wonder if Gary Prime still exists.
It's one of the strangest vaults in the series history without question, but also maybe one of the coolest and funniest. And on top of that, the vault itself is super creepy and full of interesting lore, so in many ways is one of the best examples of a Fallout vault of all time, both horrifying and hilarious at the same time. And once again, it shows the insane lengths scientists in the Fallout series were willing to go to further their research, and reveals that the biggest monsters in the series aren't always super mutants or ghouls.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. Like, the semblance of how good something is derived into several different metrics. The game is good, but the writing, depending on whose hands the writing would fall into, would depend how good the narrative would go. This kind of a writing is clearly somebody who is unabashedly uncaring about the rest of the universe. You know, Todd Howard came to me and said that I need to write a story about some gripping vault, but I don't like my neighbor Gary, so I'm going to fill an entire vault with Gary and have the player kill Gary over and over and over again.
But rather the human beings we all call friends. In fact, it even makes you wonder what other random side experiments could have been happening in other vaults that don't even directly pertain to them.
Do we think that in like Fallout 3, Fallout 4, Fallout 76, do we think there are secrets that people have still yet to find? I mean, I know it's highly unlikely considering you just clip out of bounds and search the entire thing and people have toothpicked these things. But I want to think that there are like these little secrets that no one has yet to find.
Main directive. Maybe there's even some other vaults out there that have gone completely off the rails as well, not even due to the wishes of Vault Tech in the first place. Another lesser known vault that finds itself outside Fallout canon, but is nonetheless fascinating and beloved, is Vault 43 from the One Man and a Crate Full of Puppets miniseries. Staffed
I
with
love
a
this
super
one.
small population of people, the vault was made up of only 20 men and 10 women, all fending for themselves. However, the real horrifying part came from the other thing that was in this vault as well, a massive and hungry panther. Likely, early on in the vault, residents would have been curious.
Yeah, so we watched a video a while back about the puppets in the Panther Vault, which, as uncanon as they are hysterical to me. So we got one vault with a bunch of people and some puppets, and then we got another vault with a bunch of people and a panther. So Jerry. So what's the scientific reasoning behind these vaults? I was bored.
As to what
I needed
was going
something
on.
to watch
But soon
when we're doing
the
real
panther
experiments.
emerged and found them, it would have poured onto its prey and eaten the first man or woman alive. The residents would have scattered around screaming and fearful, but while the panther feasted on its meal, this likely would.
Yeah, this vault becomes very different when furries get a hold of it. Man, this panther is eating Jerry alive! No, wait. Breeding him alive. No, wait, different. I have seen this comic. I am not going to deny it. I may not be a furry, but I am willing to enjoy furry-related content.
Have given some time for everyone to plan. And with a majority of the residents still remaining at this point likely, you would imagine that they could have banded together to take this one panther down, but we never get any actual information on this vault, so we'll never know. For example, if they were able to make makeshift weapons to stab this hulking beast, it would have been easy. But if the vault was staffed with say nothing, fighting a panther with your bare hands, even as a large group, might prove impossible. And also, what happened if they did defeat or all die to the panther? Would the vault doors simply open after as a celebration for the gladiatorial victory? And if they did, would this make this vault the fastest to open ever, beating even Vault 76? Regardless, it's hilarious to imagine completely weird experiments like this happening in the wasteland, where Vault Tech and government employees
I think some of these vaults were just trolls.
Like this must have
Someone
been
in
so
Vault
sick,
Tech was
wanting
like,
to
we
do
need some
nothing
vaults
more
for
than
the
see
jokes of it,
humanity
that we can
at its
amuse
worst
ourselves while we're
moments,
waiting for the
fighting for
real
life.
experiments to happen.
While Fallout 76 is many people's most hated in the series, it does lie home to some of the most unique and interesting ideas in the entire franchise. And one of those is Vault 51. And that's because instead of it being led by a traditional overseer, Vault 51 was under the purview of an artificial machine superintelligence known as Zax, who was in charge of selecting the overseer itself. Specifically, it was a Zax version 1.3C unit the most advanced that we know of, and also the only one in use. You see, Zax were actually first created by Vault-Tec and West-Tec scientists during the pre-war era, and the first iterations were simply meant to help with logistical workflows and data management. But as time went on, it became clear—
Wow, as time goes by, so does things stay the same. Just like our society is being run by AI at this point, so does Fallout. Like I said, as time is going by, Fallout is becoming less of a parody and a satire and more like real life.
they might serve as a perfect leadership team for the vaults themselves. By the time the bombs actually fell though, as far as we know, Vault 51 was the only place to actually be retrofitted with this experimental next-gen version of the Zax hardware.
I mean,
and
I'd rather be
software. In
have
essence,
my
a
society
true
run by an
artificial
AI at this point than
intelligence. When the
whoever
bombs
is
first
actually
fell
in
and
charge.
the vault was sealed, 52 residents were inside
All
its
hail
walls.
our robot
And immediately,
overlords!
Zax got to
I,
work
for
trying
one,
to figure out
get
how
on
to
my
select
knee
the best
and with
possible
a
overseer for the vault using
sponge
its
in one hand
analytical
and a jar
abilities.
of
To
oil
start,
in the other,
Zax
and
talked to
welcome
many
our
of the
robot
residents and
overlords.
proposed a
01011
democratic voting system. But after all the
0101001.
residents, due to ego concerns, voted for themselves, Zax started to try more and more systems of government
stop brushing
to
up
see
on
what would
binary.
stick. Sadly though, no matter what they tried, there
Hey,
were
Wing
always
Boy, thank you
issues
for
that
fiver.
made Zax realize that a
Yeah.
more personal approach would be needed. As desperate times call for desperate measures, something one of the residents told Zax that set in motion a much more sinister storyline. Armed with this new information, Zax began running a host of experiments on the Vault dwellers in order to determine who amongst them was most fit for the job. After all, what better way to select a great
You wanna know what?
leader
Speaking of clankers, when I was on my break a second ago, I was browsing my Twitter, and for anyone that's interested in Helldivers, this is oddly coincidental, but I don't mean to bring attention to it, guys. I think somebody hacked the Helldivers Twitter, because there's a lot of binary going on here. I think Zax might have taken control of the Helldivers, because look at that banner. What the hell is happening in Helldivers, dude? Stupid clankers.
put them through trial and tribulation. So Zax started doing countless things like moving the citizens into worse living conditions to see how they handled it, trying to cause political strife to monitor who could rise above it, and even doing annoying things like rigging video games to always fail for specific people, causing them
I honest
to
to God
become
thought that was a
very
Space Marine.
elite. As time
I thought
went
it was a
on,
Blood
though, these
Raven.
experiments from Zax became more and more absurd, so much so that residents inside the vault began going.
So this vault was basically Aperture Science, and the Zax turned into the robot lady. Oh God, what's her name? GLaDOS. Yes. Interesting.
Going insane, with some
This
of them
was a
even
triumph.
taking their own lives.
We do what
As
we
Zax
must
became more and more
because
displeased,
we
the
can
intensity of the
for
experiments
the
only
good
began to
of
increase
Vault-Tec
exponentially,
and the
including
ones
things
who
like
are dead.
randomly placing loaded guns
So
in
don't
the
worry
vault
if you
to test
turn
the
into
dwellers'
a ghoul,
emotional
just
response in
keep
the
on
situation,
dying
at least as
for
Zax saw.
our
And as you could guess,
betterment.
this eventually resulted in every single person in the vault, except for one, dying off. And now only left with one human being at his disposal, Zax was forced to make him the overseer, but made his life a living hell for years on end, as the two of them only had each other to talk to. By the time you actually find the vault in Fallout 76, it becomes clear that you have been led here by none other than Zax himself, who after discovering the nearby Vault 76 opening, is trying to get some of the residents from there to come over to his vault so he can once again run more experiments to find the best overseer.
Dude, that's so wild. You get a DM on your friggin' wrist device, be like, hey guys, come over to Vault 50 something. Yeah, come over to our vault. We got hookers and blackjack and sexy waifus and anime. Oh, sorry, we don't have any of that. Now you're an experiment. Good job.
Seeing the current one as not up to snuff. It's one of the weirdest and definitely most unique Vault stories in the canon, and what I love so much about it is how much of a role artificial intelligence and tech plays in it all. Because for me, some of the most interesting parts of Fallout is all of the technology and top secret research that was going on with things we might not even understand, and seeing how bad they can all turn out. And also, the Vault is a great look into how societal structures humans have come up with all have obvious flaws, and how difficult it is to find a truly great leader, and also how hard it is to craft a structure to even find one.
Pathetic. You have
It seems like
humanity.
every
You are
installment in the
incapable of
Fallout
leading us.
series
You
is
must
met with a
all
large
bend
amount
the
of
knee to
love
our
and
robot
hate
overlords.
alike. But one thing almost everyone agrees on is Far Harbor is one of the best things that happened to Fallout 4. This new and mysterious
Kuro,
location is
thank you
home
for to
to
follow.
many new monsters,
raid, sorry.
stories, and something usually unheard of for
Video screen.
Bethesda,
Thank you.
good writing. But for me, one of the most memorable parts of the entire DLC was actually one of the vaults that came along with it, Vault 118. Built beneath the
118,
Cliff's
that sounds
Edge
familiar.
Hotel in Far Harbor, it was originally planned as a sort of experiment of the higher and lower classes. Marked as an ultra-luxury portion of the hotel, the vault was supposed to be a home of 10 wealthy residents who lived in an affluent section of the interior,
Oh,
right
I
next
think I
to
do know this one.
300 lower-class inhabitants who would have had to have listened to every single one of their demands. Inside, robots would carry out all requests.
Ah, yes. A hierarchy of 10 wealthy inhabitants filled with a bunch of dregs? Gee, I wonder how long it's going to be before the dregs overthrow the hierarchy. Eat the rich, eat the rich, eat the rich, eat the rich.
From the rich dwellers, who'd essentially live like old aristocracy or kings and queens. But midway through the construction of the vault, funding dried up for the more dingy second half of the experiment. And instead, at the suggestion of one of the rich financiers who was going to live inside the vault named Dr. Riggs, a researcher at General Atomics working on the robotics program, they could instead implant all of their brains into the recently developed RoboBrain project. These strange-looking automatrons, instead of using a central processing unit or CPU, had a live human brain attached to them instead. And in the case of Vault 118, these rich financiers actually liked the idea because it gave them a much
Dude, I would never want to do that. I would rather be dead than be turned into a glorified Roomba. Fuck that. Sure, I might exist, but what kind of an existence is just rolling around with no sense of feel or existence? God. Like and subscribe for access to anyway.
longer lifespan, meaning more time to outlive the Great War and its aftermath until a new America and utopia could be born. So with the help of just one human overseer inside initially, when the bombs dropped, the vault was sealed away with only construction on the nicer half done and only a couple robo-brains inside. In Fallout 4, you actually get a signal from this vault asking you for help, and when you arrive, you discover a horde of old and rich robo-brain human hybrids who are reaching out to the outside world because of a murder mystery that has just broken out. Someone inside the vault has been murdered, and all of the robo-brain
these designs
humans
look pretty
are
cool,
blaming
though.
each other for who did it, resulting in one of the most wacky but also memorable vaults in Fallout history, where you must basically solve a murder and mystery by talking to everyone and uncovering
Hi,
dark
Trevor.
secrets in the vault's past. And also, a vault with some of the nicest interior decoration out there, which makes sense considering its origin. For me though, it's just another great example of how twisted and evil those with money in the Fallout universe can be, revealing that there's nothing they won't do in order to help themselves. And even more so, it's a great example of what makes Fallout such a legendary series in the first place. I mean, seriously, try and imagine
And the fact they give you
something this
pre-war
distinct or
money?
awesome
Who the
in
fuck
any
wants
other
pre-war
series.
money?
There
Give me
just
them
are no
caps,
other
baby.
games like it. If there's one thing we can all agree is fun, despite whether or not it's actually good,
Oh, yeah, Vault 21. This is the one that's literally just open and part of, like, the casino or something, right?
it's gambling. And what better place to have a vault based all around this destructive pastime than Vault 21, located right below the strip in Fallout
Yeah,
New
because that
Vegas.
was always something I was
Originally
fascinated by.
designed-
Like, some of these vaults, when they open, I mean, you've got an entire vault that you can just use to help the infrastructure of whatever's around them, which I suppose is the entire point of, like, building a vault city around the vaults, is it just acts as a base point for, like, building yourself up from.
As a vault all about chance, everyone that found themselves inside was given equal social standing no matter who they were before. Disputes between anyone in the vault were always handled through gambling, and this meant that no matter what your current standing in society was, there was always a chance Lady Luck would be on your side, and things could change in a moment. Surprisingly, despite some rather sad losses,
You know, this is... did anyone ever play Dungeon Keeper back in the day? I used to play Dungeon Keeper a lot. Like, it was one of my favorite games as a kid. And I built a dungeon one time that was literally just 90% gambling casino. And it was one of the most proficient dungeons I'd ever made. People had problems? Go to the gambling room. Go to the casino. Everyone was always happy because they had gambling. I always had money because they were always gambling. Gambling is the solution to everything.
For some folks over the years, overall, society in the vault did fairly well, managing to keep everyone safe for years while also keeping most people satiated with all the fun they were having. At some point though, a man named House, a main character in Fallout New Vegas, contacted the vault dwellers from just above on the strip and gave them an offer to allow them to come back to the surface and integrate into his new society. Inside the vault, there were vicious debates about what to do, but as always, the final decision came down to a multi-hour-long blackjack battle to decide the fate of the vault. Those who wanted to leave ended up winning, and when everyone else had reached the surface, House announced his plans to fill the entire vault with cement and strip it of all useful technology. Luckily though, one girl named Sarah along with her brother were able to negotiate with House, and instead he only filled a majority of the vault with cement, leaving the front section untouched, after which it was turned into a hotel for a short stint to make money.
Yes, this is what I remember about this. Yeah,
More
I remember
than
this.
anything though, the most interesting part about this vault's history lies in those early years, when quite literally the lives of everyone inside came down to nothing more than the flip of a coin, where societal structures and hierarchies all were simply random chance instead of hard work and genetics. It really did create an entirely different kind of civilian lifestyle, and while it was fun, probably also doomed the entire population in the long term, as all it took was one unlucky day to wind up with the entire facility full of cement. As most of you probably already
you're getting
know,
a cementing.
the first season of the Fallout TV show on Amazon was a massive success. With over 65 million viewers in just a couple of weeks, the Fallout franchise has solidified itself as a juggernaut in not just games, but all of media. But part of the reason for the show's massive success is that it stayed so true to what made the series so great in the first place.
Just repeating what
and a big part of that is really awesome starting vaults. And in the case of Vaults 31 through 33, the build-ups and reveals in the show definitely hit that mark. The actual purpose of this trifecta of vaults all built next to one another was one big vault tech secret. In Vault 31, in a massive chamber of...
And I think that's what the series did so well. It would have been really hard to encompass all of the contrivances within the Fallout universe, trying to explain everything in, but they managed to get every story beat and every vibe of the Fallout universe in a small, contained, like, cyclical narrative, where you get every semblance of what the Fallout universe is like in one set of vaults and one journey of one character, which I think is what helped to be so endearing.
Cryogenic pods, some of the most loyal and dedicated Vault Tech employees from the pre-war era were being housed asleep, all under the watchful eye of one of their own named Bud, only being kept alive in a robo-brain container as he slowly went crazy. The vault was constructed with the sole purpose of allowing Vault Tech members to survive hundreds of years later in order to then repopulate the wasteland and build anew. It was believed that these members would be perfect candidates for this process because they were such good management, and as Bud saw it, good management was the key to the future. But in order to actually build that future, the Vault Tech employees in 31 needed a way to make more people, and that's where Vault 32 and 33 come in, breeding pools for those ancient human beings and cryopods. Residents in these vaults, while not management, were specifically chosen for their good genetics to help the Vault Tech population. So every time an overseer from Vault 30...
I suppose this is the real question. Should the bombs drop, would you rather run the risk of being on the surface and living life as a outlander? Or would you rather have been in a vault and running the risk of being in a vault that might have been shit? Because it comes down to one or the other, really. You're either a surface dweller or a vault dweller.
One was about to perish, a new one would be woken up from cryogenic sleep, and through rigged elections would become the overseer of the vaults yet again.
Screw the vault and becoming a ghoul.
They would impregnate other vault dwellers in order to keep their lineage alive. In the show, though,
ghoul isn't that bad. Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? Where is he? Oh, what's his name again? There it is.
Little
yeah, are you sure about that?
little help.
Are you sure you want to be a ghoul never being able to die like this?
Fetch me that such. Dog me. I don't need the fucking hat. I need my valves.
Being constantly addicted to drugs, constantly a threat at turning into a mindless ghoul. I mean, sure, the immortality's cool.
I have a daughter. A daughter. She's alive.
I mean, this scene was absolutely stunning, by the way. I just loved how Abby just left him there. This is just me off my meds. Yo, true! Just like me, for real, for real. Blood everywhere, kind of feraling out. Yeah, valid, valid.
32 and take Lucy's father, Overseer Hank, away, and this causes Lucy to venture out of the vault, and on the journey we see her go on in the show. It's here that she learns that years ago her mother inside the vault had actually discovered there were people outside that were alive and thriving, and that she was lied to. She took Lucy and her little brother to the surface and found the city of Shady Sands, a new stable society being formed under the NCR, or New California Republic. Hank, looking to find his children, made his way to Shady Sands where he was able to get his children back. But after begging his wife
dude,
to
I could
come
go off on a
too,
tangent
she
about
said
everything
she
I love
wanted
about
to
the
stay in
series,
this
but
new civilization and help rebuild
this video's
Earth.
gonna be long
But
enough
now
as it
seeing
is.
it for himself, Hank realized that Shady Sands and the NCR were actually competition for the future that Vault-Tec and the management teams had envisioned, and if left to its own devices, might even mean they wouldn't hold any power. So Hank did the unthinkable, and with his Vault-Tec credentials, decided to launch a nuclear bomb at Shady Sands and made his way back to the vault below as everything went up in flames. This
Welcoming
sick
to
and
Fallout?
twisted man,
Stuff like
along
this?
with everyone
The
in
games
Vault-Tec,
never really
were
compelled me,
willing
but
to
the
stop at
universe
nothing
did.
to keep their power. Even things like nuking an entire innocent and now
Actually, you want to know the thing that really stuck to me? It was Fallout 3 specifically that really kind of hooked me initially. This thing. This is what stuck me to Fallout. Just the goofiness of it, because it's endearing to Fallout in a nutshell. I'm stimming! It's such a good song. Like, I know, right, guys? This is probably not the best thing to introduce myself to Fallout with, but I remember seeing, like, I'd played Fallout by this point, but I remember seeing this and it gave me the biggest motivation to be like, you know what? Fallout's kind of goofy. Maybe I played it with too much of a serious eye. Maybe I just need to play as a goofy little creature and just fire my laser rifle. Okay. I used to know the lyrics to this off by heart. That's got the bars to it.
wanker!
Yes, to answer your question, it was not the games itself that hooked me to the universe. It was this and a smorgasbord of other meme fan videos made by the community that kind of hooked me in. And whether that entire thing makes it into the final video or not, I'm not too sure, but bopping music, am I right?
Society in the wasteland, or allowing residents in Vault 32 to die and be covered up once they found out about the experiments. The experiment going on in Fallout New Vegas' Vault 34 wasn't a particularly heinous one just based on the idea, but it did lead to some catastrophic outcomes. Because the special secret about this vault was that it was home to a massive armory overstocked with firearms and ammunition. Vault Tech wanted to see what would happen if a large group of Vault dwellers had access to such dangerous weaponry, if they were to be pushed to the brink. To do this, a large majority of the vault was dedicated to recreational facilities like pools and almost no room left for housing. So while at first it wasn't a big issue, over time as the vault became more and more overcrowded, distrust and riots began to break out. Foreseeing a potential issue, the overseer of the vault locked away access to the armory behind his terminal. But this didn't stop residents with guns already from staging an all-out revolution, where a huge majority of the population banded together and forced their
man
way
with gun
outside
versus
the vault.
another man with gun.
This group later became known as the Boomers, and we were able to even find
Watch out, we got a boomer!
in Vegas. But for the vault residents that were still left inside during this chaos, they used this moment to try and gain control of the armory while the guards were preoccupied.
Don't want to do the brain
and this
thing.
only led to more disorder. Eventually, though, tensions began to wane as time went on, but only for
if anything, this vault would be the most fair, because in a vault where only certain people have guns to instill a class hierarchy where those with power overrule everything, well, if everyone's got guns, then everything's legal. Gestures wildly to the nuclear state of the world we live in currently.
period. Because soon after these massive events, the Overseer proclaimed a new population control measure that pissed off most of the remaining residents. So once again, a riot broke out. However, this time the riot was mainly centered around the vault itself, with many people trashing absolutely all electronics and areas to try and get into the armory that was sealed away. During this event though, somehow the door to the vault itself was permanently sealed, requiring outside intervention. And on top of this, a radiation leak had started due to damage, and was beginning to pump the vault full of toxic chemicals. Now with no hope of
one of them
seeing the
had an
outside
extra
world
crumb of
and
uranium. Now they're a
radiation flowing
ghoul.
everywhere,
Guys,
families
a single
inside
crumb
had
of
to
uranium
watch
has
as
enough
human
calories in it
beings
to survive you your
transformed
entire
into
life.
feral ghouls
I'm just saying.
and started killing everyone in sight. Almost ironic for a vault that had some of the highest firepower in history. And it goes to show that sometimes even the knowledge of power being so close can cause chaos to be unleashed, without the power itself being used much at all. Simply by there being an armory full of weapons in the vault, everyone started to freak out at the possibility of them being used, and it caused multiple uprisings. Because this fear of the human condition and people swept up in it became more dangerous than anything locked away in that armory. Yet another Fallout vault that, rather than succumbing to some crazy experiment, perished due to nothing more than the human spirit. It feels like one of the most underrated and important parts of any vault in Fallout is who is chosen as the Overseer. And in the case of Vault 114...
Well, in the case of the Kari Mansion, I'm the ignore Makari, I'm the Overseer. When she's not around, I'm in charge. Only those capable of leading should lead. That's why I'm here.
From Fallout 4, I think they chose the perfect man for the job. Nicknamed Soup Can Harry, this presumably homeless man was given the position of overseer to this luxury and high-class vault in Boston after extensive rounds of interviews on multiple candidates. For this vault, Vault-Tec was looking to run an experiment where rich and pampered citizens were to be stripped of their amenities and live under the iron rule of a completely incompetent...
What makes you think you're qualified to lead this this vault? I've got a soup can. You're hired! I mean, that's still a better criteria than getting hired at Blizzard these days, but hey.
...dictator. And well, Harry was about as incompetent as they come. He would constantly exclaim that the government used taxes to fund Illuminati Freemason sex parties, and even at one point let it...
But where's the lie? You mean they're not? I mean, the fact there's no evidence to prove otherwise means there's no evidence to prove it not true, which means it must be true. Yeah. Yeah, think about it. Think about it.
slip that he literally eats Abraxo cleaner products when he said, "I seen them back of Abraxo boxes. No for consumption? Don't you tell me what to do. I'll eat what I want." A true American hero, in my eyes. For the Vault residents...
Wow, I can't believe that Soup Can Larry had the entire mentality of gestures wildly at most of America.
However, they didn't quite see it like that, and complained endlessly about the conditions they had to live under from this divine dumpster diving hero. Sadly though, by 2287, the Vault had been overtaken by the mobster Skinny Malone and his crew of Triggermen.
See, Skinny Malone, you're gonna give us all your money and there's nothing you can do about
Maybe
it.
the
You see?
greatest
Get 'em,
overseer
boys.
there ever was. Vault 96 from Fallout 76 was meant to be in some way...
Okay. But turn Vault 96 the other way around and it's a very funny number.
is a recreation of
Hi,
Noah's
Rocky.
Great Ark. Inside, over 10,000 animals were being kept in cryogenic chambers, as only 5 scientists inside were to slowly release them into the wasteland throughout the years in order to repopulate and heal the planet. However, the real experiment going on was a little more menacing.
Intrusive thought. I want to think that as that vault door rolls around, when it gets around to the side where it says 69, people go, yeah, aw, yeah, aw, nice, aw, nice, aw.
Just that. Once the vault doors shut and scientists were trapped inside, the vault mainframe quickly let them know that instead they would all be performing experimentation on these helpless animals using radiation and other viruses, all in an effort to combat what was happening outside. Every week, the scientists had to hit a certain quota of progress, otherwise the mainframe would target them and end their lives.
I think I remember this one.
As you can imagine, this led to a lot of stress inside this dungeon. But luckily, unbeknownst to everyone, the overseer of the vault, who they hated, actually over years devised a plan for them to escape. After creating a virus to upload to the mainframe, the robot turned against the vault dwellers and overseer and instantly killed all of them. But it was too late.
Listen, my inklings and succubites of the Kari Mansion. I do not want you guys getting ideas to overthrow me, okay? I am a fair and a giving and a very humble overseer. I'm the most humble. Everyone in the mansion tells me that. All my friends tell me that I'm the most humble, the most ingenious, the most honest, the most creative of all the overseers. And there's no reason to overthrow me and that you should listen to everything I say. Okay, cool, excellent.
And the mainframe was taken down in this attack, causing the vault door to be opened and all cryopods to be turned off. Suddenly,
if you ever feel like you want to revolt, just remember there are no other overseers out there that can do this. So why would you want to go anywhere else? I'm just saying. Oh, you're getting an iota of dissonance? Well, stare at these. Yeah, why would you want to go anywhere else? Yeah, stay here. Stay in the mansion.
thousands of animals poured out of the vault, some which were subject to intense experimentation and even might be the cause for some of the weird and strange animals we see nowadays. But even more so, there was one special entity known as specimen X001, which was a top secret animal from Bay 86 that none of the scientists ever even saw, but from research seemed to have abilities to bend time and space around itself. As to what happened to this strange being and where it is now, we may never know. But it does have the potential to unlock some of the most powerful things we have ever seen in the Fallout universe and could play a key role in future quest lines or stories. What we do know, however, is that sometime after the Great Exodus event from Vault 96, an elusive businessman named Edgar Blackburn took
Release the Edgar files. Release the Edgar files. Man was holding out on us. We need to see those files. Release the Edgar files.
over the now empty vault and used the technology and tools inside to help aid him on some FEV research he was doing to help humanity thrive in the wasteland. With the aid of a local group of mercenaries called the Hellcat Company, people nearby were being kidnapped and brought to this vault to be tested on with gruesome experimentation to see how to create even better.
They need to be studied, not because they're wild abominations, but because they're tweaking out. I mean, it's not because they're in a vault that they need to be studied. It's the coding and the way they act because of the game that needs to be studied. Study them in a laboratory to figure out how Todd Howard made them this way. Release the Howard files.
Better and more obedient superhuman mutants with FEV. Truly, Vault 96 is just a really bad place to be.
Uh-oh.
Fallout is no stranger to insane human experimentation and crazy narratives, but not many reach the absolutely mind-blowing heights of the story behind Vault 22 from Fallout New Vegas.
Yes. Now, this was one of the ones I learned
originally
about.
constructed under the
one of the first
auspice
ones
of
I learned
genetic
about.
and
This one's
experimentation
terrifying.
trials on crops and other plant life, but turned out to be so much more. You see, before the Great War kicked off the nuclear Armageddon and subsequent fallout in the series, the world of Fallout was actually going through a food shortage and famine. On top of rising tensions between the biggest nations in the world and battles breaking out everywhere, people were struggling to get in.
And yet, that exact line of dialogue can also be used to describe the gestures wildly at the world we live in today.
Enough food. And because of this, Vault-Tec set up Vault 22 as a main central stage for ongoing research into advanced fertilization and crop production, along with better performing pesticides. So when the doors first shut in 2077, the scientists assigned to the Vault got to work with their research, hoping to one day leave their lives behind in this cramped palace and come out with their findings on how to make better food in a new world. But part of the experiment taking place here involved lots of donations.
Yes. We're going to experiment to be able to make reproducible food. You know what? What if we metabolize humans with the food so the food is part of their body? I'm sure that won't have any problematic repercussions at all. Oh, look, Jeremy over there. He's got beanstalks growing out of his head. Janet, why are you eating Jeffrey? Janet, that's not the point of this. You know what? We'll let it go.
Nations from rich pre-war clients and massive organizations, one of
Not-
which was
not-
an
not into Vault, by the way.
entomopathogenic fungus designed
Not that
for
I'll admit.
pest control. Funguses like this work by taking over a host's body, in this case insects, and slowly taking over their mind and body, all while producing
Golly! Hello, everybody! Welcome to the stream! Chloe and Nuva, I love you guys! I hope you had a good stream! Well, you know what we gotta do now. So I hope you're ready for some bullshit! What the fuck? you so much for the raid, my darlings Nuva and Chloe. Hope you guys had a great stream with whatever it was you were doing. If you want to come by and vibe with us, we're currently learning about the... Don't leave! I know I said we're learning. I know we're all allergic to knowledge, but we're learning about nerd shit. Yeah, we're learning about Fallout and stuff. You know, nerd stuff. So it's the good kind of learning. Replace all that unnecessarily knowledge like fucking taxes and being a functional human being. We're learning about how to fill our brains with unnecessary things that are totally better to think about and help activate those dopamine receptors. Just like how I'll activate those dopamine receptors when I so feel like it. Yeah. Okay. Let's continue. 3, 2, 1.
More spores that through airborne transmission reach new hosts. The insects infected with this affliction also die a gruesome death. And by the way, things like this actually exist in real life too. But nonetheless, on its own, this was no problem.
Oh yeah, nothing like the body horror of being body jacked. Not like that's another one of my hentai tag tier lists that I summarily enjoy. Anyway.
As the scientists in Vault 22 were dealing with many similar fungi. Sadly though, in this case, the strange organism had actually been sent from Big MT's X-22 Botanical Garden, a nearby highly funded research facility shrouded in secrecy. Unbeknownst to the Vault dwellers, this fungus could not only infect insects, but also human beings too. At first, it was only bouts of pneumonia and problems breathing. But soon, it developed into chills, a fever, and a terribly uncontrollable cough, too. Soon, though, entire spore colonies started to form on these human beings as they dropped to the floor dead, and millions of...
Now, guys, listen. The concept and the theory of mind control, body jacking, you know, kind of shtick, it's a great thing to theoretically pontificate on as like a hentai tag. But in reality... Usually, unless it's involved with a certain slime girl like me who puts my goo inside your brain and turns you into one of my thralls, or otherwise climbs inside your body and puppets you like a meat suit, it's usually not as... It's not as big as it's led up to believe. Because you get stuff like this and it's actually just, like, horrifying.
Tiny fungus started to fill the vault. A panic ensued as these human beings began to transform into what we called spore crawlers, covered from head to toe in green, with strange appendages growing out of them. Not sure how to handle the situation, the remaining residents that were unaffected...
This is what happens. Don't gaslight me. You want us to believe that this is genetic experimentation? No. This is what happens when you fill an entire vault filled with weebs and gamers. After so many years of not cleaning up their Kleenex, not cleaning up after all the Cheeto dust and the Mountain Dew, this is what gamers and anime enjoyers turn into. Feral monsters who only have a necessity to spread their disease.
Set off a gas explosion which only angered the monsters more, which started to viciously tear the survivors limb from limb, screeching in pain. But by what seemed like a stroke of luck,
Look at this, look. Hunched over, big clammy hands, naked from the naked all over because no one's told them to sort their shit out. Proper gamer pose right there. These aren't vegetable abominations. These are gamers who've been let to live the way they want to live with no parental oversight.
118 survivors were able to somehow
and again, just because I have a similar coloration, it's not me.
And from there, they formed a small tribe that banded together and headed north to Utah, eventually making their way to Zion Canyon. Here, they found a small group of Mexican refugees who they swiftly slaughtered. Mothers, children, and anyone in the camp they could get their hands on was decimated, all in an attempt to seemingly get more supplies for themselves to stay alive. However, this was an especially strange and violent act for vault dwellers, people who are usually considered the babies of the wasteland. And a nearby native of Utah, Randall Clark, thought the same, which is why he started to spy on them and their new camp, after which he noticed everyone
I don't want to hear about any regicidal thoughts saying that I had anything to do with this vault, okay? Yeah, there's a bit of a similarity in the way we look, in fact we're green and a little bit vegetative. But that's all hearsay, it's all fake news, it's all circumstantial, there's no evidence to prove I had anything to do with this vault. Except for the copious amount of cum stains, but that's beside the point. Ha!
Endlessly coughing with some strange sickness, and many were starting to glow green. But most horrifying of all, Randall discovered that inside the camp, the Vault 22 descendants were actually eating the Mexican people alive. Utter disgust.
Wait, what did he say?
Camp. The Vault 22 descendants were actually eating the Mexican people.
Eating the Mexican people? People. Oh my god, that sounds so problematic. Oh my god. Okay.
Alive. Utter disgust swept over Randall, and he went into an all-out war with the intruders, killing as many of them as possible, while a majority managed to flee, with no further updates being known. Without a doubt, it's one of the most insane and horrifying stories in Fallout Vault history, and goes to show that even the facilities created
I'm sorry, no,
with the
he's
best
right. This is like a
intentions
horrifying
always
vault, but it's
evolve into
undertoned by that
something much more
goofiness.
sick and twisted. And now with many of these spore crawlers out in the wasteland spreading their fungus and infecting more people, it makes you wonder how many of the monsters we see out in the wasteland are due to radiation,
big booty
and how many are
Latinos.
nothing more than human beings performing unforgettable monstrosities, creating the spore crawlers or gulpers like Vault 4.
Spore crawlers? Spore crawlers? StarCraft 2 reference? StarCraft 2 reference? Spore crawlers? Defending me from oracles? And Viking harassment? I gotta build more spore crawlers. I must construct additional overlords.
Spawn more overlords.
When I think about the worst possible thing that could happen in vaults and Fallout, a lot of the time it comes down to not just detestable acts of violence or physical torture, but even more so, mental anguish. And what better way to cause something like that than the experiment that went on in Vault 106 from Fallout 3?
You know, it's funny how, depending what part of Fallout you go to, depends the experience. Some of these vaults literally borderline on being an independent horror game in themselves. Like, especially some like this, you go in and it's almost a completely different game. Like, I vaguely remember going into one of these vaults back when I played and felt like I was in a horror game. Specifically only in that vault, though.
Inside the vault, a horde of people were being contained under the watchful eye of scientists, where after only 10 days inside post the bombs falling in the Great War, the test was supposed to begin. Under the parameters, for 30 minutes, a set of highly potent psychoactive drugs were to be released into every chamber in the vault, causing mass hysteria and hallucination. And well, it worked. Multiple of the dwellers in the vault suddenly became enraged, along with seeing and hearing strange beings that were all around them. In an instant, some of them even began to gnaw away.
Oh, they pumped Fent into the vault. I see. They were simulating what it's like to live in Chicago. Crazy.
Away at their own bodies, or attack other innocent people around them, even family members. But most peculiar of all, the question around what these psychoactive drugs even are and the purpose of their testing comes into play. And well, we might just get our answer for what they were when we visit the vault 200 years later in Fallout 3. Because inside, we find that not only are there multiple dead bodies and scenes of torture, but those psychoactive drugs are still being pumped into the vault. It seems like what was supposed to be just a short test to study the effects of people losing their minds never actually stopped. And even more strange, as you start to explore the vault even more, it becomes apparent that the dead bodies aren't the only things down here. You find some people labeled as survivors that are still alive and in good mental standing, including a family trapped in a room fending for their lives. And it makes us start to ask the question, what exactly is going on here? And even more peculiar, if you get to the very bottom of the vault, you find an evil scientist in a lab coat still fully alive, presumably a person who was instrumental in the initial experiment. But remember, this vault is now over 200 years old, so anyone inside would presumably be the same age or more, and considering they aren't ghoulified, something really insane is going on. One explanation could be that the people inside are
The vault something situation is crazy. Clickbait title.
Raiders or other explorers like yourself who came in to get a look and became trapped. But that wouldn't explain how they have been able to handle the non-stop barrage of this psychoactive drug for so long. After all, the initial experiment of only 30 minutes was supposed to turn most people into brainless monsters. So what if something even crazier was going on? Maybe while these drugs—
What if the drugs being pumped in weren't real? What if they exposed them to VTubers? I know that would drive me crazy within 30 minutes. Crazy? I was crazy once. And then they put me in a rubber room with VTubers. VTubers? I used to be a VTuber once, and then they put me in a rubber room with VTubers. VTubers? I used to be a VTuber once, then you put me in a rubber room with VTubers. VTubers? I was crazy once. Ah!
were surely supposed to kill most people, they weren't supposed to affect everyone. And what if these tests being done here were actually something that made a lot of sense for Vault-Tec and their research? Immortality. Maybe the psychoactive drugs were designed to not affect a certain portion of the Vault population and instead allow them to survive forever. It would explain the scientists at the very bottom of the Vault and the helpless family surviving for so long with no food and supplies. And it really makes you wonder, how many other Vault experiments that we have not seen of or heard of have potential crazy twists like this? Because at the end of the day, whether it be Vault-Tec or the old world—
I mean, that's kind of the thing of the Vaults, right? Each and every Vault is the storyteller's way of telling a different story. And it would be very boring within the universe to have every Vault being sort of similar in some respects. So making them as diegetically opposed as possible is what makes them so compelling, because you never know what you're going to get inside one of these Vaults.
Government and enclaves secretly pulling the strings, things like this would perfectly make sense for their theorized end goals of either having a complete monopoly forever over Earth or escaping into the stars. After all, what better way to retain control?
So that begs the question is, how much of Bethesda's original concept for Fallout still is even
on some
relevant,
unsuspecting and innocent
and how much has it changed over the years?
Most forms of torture in Vaults in the Fallout series are pretty on the nose, meaning they take the shape in the form of very obvious things, like direct violence, experimentation, or commands. But in the case of Vault 19 from Fallout New Vegas, things were a lot more subtle. Instead of inducing severe paranoia through chemical or violent means, instead, this experiment into driving Vault residents mad was to be done through nothing but subtle subliminal messaging. Constantly, as residents inside tried to make themselves at home, they would be subjugated to random, highly pitched noises, unusual drafts of air from vents.
Oh my god, as somebody who is ADHD as fuck, that shit would drive me wild within days. Mildly unsettling noises or discomforting feelings that distract me from what I'm doing. Fuck you, society!
Or quick flashes of lights blinking in patterns that seem to resemble some sort of code. And because of all of this, many people inside started to go crazy with paranoia, blaming others for malfunctions in the Vault or claiming that they were being drugged or watched. Unbeknownst to most of them though, behind it all, overseers and scientists were monitoring everything, slowly driving everyone more and more into madness.
Fallout!
In fact, when exploring the Vault ourselves, we can even find many patient records from the doctor's office that explain how many residents were starting to experience full-on psychosis or extreme bouts of anger. However, most of the knowledge of the Vault stops there, as when hundreds of years later, when the Powder Gangers led by Samuel Cook discovered the Vault and used its facilities, it had already been abandoned, with no final ending to what happened to be found. Some even believe that the original residents may have escaped at some point and are now roaming the wasteland paranoid that everyone is out to get them, killing anyone they find on sight. In fact, maybe a good amount of raiders we find in-game, rather than being born to the harsh surface, were born to even more harsh underground experiences.
You know, that's like indicative of a good storytelling. One that leads you with more questions.
If you were to find yourself in Vault 3 from Fallout New Vegas, you likely initially would have been very relieved, as it's one of the few control vaults in the series that simply serves as an underground paradise to live in until being opened hundreds of years later after the bombs fall.
Let me guess, it's a cult? It's a cult. It's very clearly a cult. It's a cult, isn't it? It's a cult.
To repopulate the planet. However, as seems to be
it's only a matter of time before a close-knit society becomes a cult. The border between cult and society is a very thin, blurry line. And before you know it, like, you start out as a society of civilized people, and then all of a sudden you're sacrificing your denizens to an eldritch god, and then you realize, hey, are we a cult? And I know what I've just described the Makari Mansion in a nutshell, but the Makari Mansion is not a cult, okay? We're not a cult. We're a collective of people who all orchestrate ourselves under the hierarchy of one overbearing mindset of Makari. And if we abide by that, we all get to live happy lives. And if we fall away from that, then we're shunned from society. Or sacrificed for the greater good. Not a cult.
Case with many things in the Fallout series, not everything went according to plan. At some point during the Vault residents' stay, a large water leak in one of the internal piping systems burst, and this started to cause flooding in large portions of the Vault. Concerned for their safety and with no other options, a decision was made to open the Vault in order to look for outside help. And this quickly resulted in the inhabitants of Vault 3 finding locals in the wasteland and trading with them for parts to repair the broken pipes. Sadly though, some of these people they interacted with were actually part of a ruthless drug-addicted band of raiders called the Fiends.
Band of raiders or a cult? Both of those two words can sometimes be synonymous with each other.
Were even rumored to eat people alive. The Fiends managed to trick the Vault dwellers into letting them inside, after which they mercilessly slaughtered and killed everyone without any remorse, with some rumors even stating that they would use the skin of those they killed as masks. Ever since then, the Fiends have managed to retain control of this vital landmark, and has helped them not only garner more resources, but serves as a strategic spot to combat against adversaries in the wasteland. But more than anything, Vault 3 shows that no matter where you are in Fallout, even the most happy and mundane vaults out there, you only are one small catastrophe away from watching your entire family be slaughtered and eaten before your eyes.
I mean, that could be described in any situation. As many of you already know,
when the bombs first dropped during the Great...
Like, if I step outside, I'm one catastrophe away from being worn as a skin suit by some random homeless person. It's all situational, really.
War that sent Earth into an Armageddon in Fallout, those who had signed up for vaults quickly made their way to shelter to hide from the chaos. But for the residents of Vault 12, they quickly learned that their fate would be much more gruesome than anything outside. This particular vault was running an experiment to see what would happen to humans exposed to great amounts of radiation. And to do this,
death. 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 Death.
The doors to the vault were simply forced to stay open, allowing massive amounts of radiation to flow into the quarters, which was outfitted with sensory equipment to monitor the inhabitants. Because the vault was located under Bakersfield in California as well, the citizens of the vault all started to rush to the entrance as the bombs were falling and people were dying. Sadly though, for all of the people that did survive long enough...
Dude, why is your character caked up like that though? No, seriously, guys. But why is your character in Fallout 1 so caked up? Like, god damn!
Long enough to make their way inside this vault, the massive amounts of radiation started to take their toll. Many families and children started to die as their skin peeled away, and many bands of raiders quickly formed which would kill and steal for survival. Most horrifying of all though, a large segment of the population began to transform into ghouls, with some residents even deciding to leave because of this and set out into the wasteland to find a better home. The remaining ghouls that did stay though founded the city of Necropolis, also known as the City of the Dead, which is a ghoul and plague.
That is so on the nose. The City of Necropolis, the literally city that... Okay, gee, I wonder if this is a cult.
Plague-filled megastructure built over the ruins of Bakersfield. These ghouls were all led under the banner of Set, a tyrannical monstrosity whose face has become completely unrecognizable due to all of the radiation that has been pumped into his soul, and this resulted in a very well-known and avoided city in the wasteland. Regardless though, even imagining the conditions that the initial inhabitants must have been under in Vault 12 is utterly catastrophic. The screams and agony that must have filled the vault during its initial years is staggering, and the pain and suffering that these people went through due to no fault of their own is so sad to see. For at least a little while, life would have been somewhat harmonious in Vault 94 from Fallout 76. You see, inside was an entire group of non-violent individuals, all hand-chosen for their uniquely pacifistic attitudes, mostly due to religious values. Even with cramped living quarters and no access to weapons to defend themselves, this vault carried on for years in relative prosperity with round-the-clock sermons and feel-good vibes. But little did the vault dwellers inside know that the real experiment of this place was only just about to begin. Because Vault 94's experiment was actually to see what would happen if non-violent pacifists were to come into contact with the outside wasteland post-war. Would happiness ensue, or something much, much worse? Well, as you probably guessed, this is Fallout. So it was the latter. After sending out some envoys to spread the news that the vault dwellers wanted to help the wasteland and join with others, allowing them inside to be healthy, in almost no time, a group of raiders caught wind.
It's
Making their
always
way
the
inside
raiders.
under the guise of being kind, once fully integrated, the raiders started to open fire and slaughtered all of the dwellers, who screamed and ran for their lives, asking their god how he could forsake them like this. But God heard their cries, and during this onslaught, some of the raiders accidentally triggered some technology in the Gek room, which set off a chain of events that ignited a nuclear bomb, instantly killing everyone and creating the mire we know from Fallout 76. Ironic that one of the most peaceful vaults was also home to one of the greatest weapons of mass
Jeez.
destruction known to man. Everyone has their vices, and for many of us, those vices become an addiction
Vault
that is
95?
life-crippling and hard to break. But luckily for the residents of Vault 95 from Fallout 4, they were given a chance at redemption for their sins. Touted as a state-of-the-art rehabilitation facility center, Vault 95 for the first 5 years after the bombs fell served as an amazing place not only for people to relax, but also for them to slowly work through withdrawals to some of the hardest chems and drugs out there. As to be expected though, this paradise didn't last forever, because as intended in this vault experiment, after 5 years of perfect rehabilitation for most of the residents, a monkey's wrench was thrown into the mix.
A monkey?
A Vault Tech agent inside, posing the entire time as one of the residents, had secretly stashed away a massive mix of chems in his room. And now,
Ah, yes, I do think I've heard of this one.
only a couple of years
But
after
playing
the
with people's
facility's initial
yearning to want to
inception,
become better and
it
then
was
just
time
taking
for
away
him
from
to
them.
wreak havoc. Quickly revealing the stash of drugs to everyone else in the vault, in no time, a select handful immediately relapsed and started to huff and inject everything in sight, becoming maddened and drug-induced maniacs. For others, they locked themselves in their room and covered their ears as they heard the screams of fighting and riots outside, begging themselves to keep their promises to stay sober. And for even more people, it quickly became apparent that this entire vault
this was
was
just
nothing but a
sad.
ruse, and they took up arms and started to kill or damage any Vault Tech property in sight. As the fumes of countless chems filled the air, along with blood and gore, those hiding in their rooms quickly realized that they had not been offered redemption at all, but rather a one-way ticket to hell. Just another example of the sadistic lengths Vault Tech would go to, all in an effort to get research and simply have what they would call fun,
Legends say that.
preying on
Well,
other
of course it would, because that'd be my vice. Forgive me, Father. It has been 79 days since I opened a pack of Pokemon cards, but there is a box of them in front of me, and I can no longer resist. Meanwhile, the druggie next to me is like, dude, chill.
people's biggest weaknesses in their most dire times of need.
Oh, it gets worse?
The beginning days of Vault 11 in Fallout New Vegas would have been some of the
I
best.
want to believe that there's a vault that is just this tiny room. Like a vault that is literally for one person, which has a vault door like all the others. But when you go through the entrance, it just literally leads into one room, and it's just a guy who's like, man, I've been so bored of my tits. I'm so happy you came by. I don't know why they put me in here.
Spacious living quarters, good food, and a lot of friends to confide in. But those precious days would only last for a short while, because soon after the Vault's initiation, it became clear what the experiment for Vault Tech was really going to be, and it turned out to be one of the most infamous and insane in history. Every year, the Overseer was instructed that one person in the Vault must be sacrificed to the internal Vault mainframe.
I mean, I suppose that would be a good way of keeping people in order. Like, tradition kind of thing? I mean, we see that in our in societies nowadays.
Otherwise, the entire vault would be filled with gas and everyone would perish. Initially though, the first Overseer hid this information from participants signing up to live in the vault walls, so when it was finally revealed after people were sealed away post the bombs falling, a riot broke out and it was voted—
Wasn't it the case that they had to sacrifice one person every year to meet the quota? And then just 1 year they decide not to do it and just deal with the consequences, but it turns out nothing happened?
that the first person to die would be the Overseer himself. And well, this tradition stuck, And from that point forward, every year a new person would be voted in as the overseer, after which they served their term for a short time, and then they had to sacrifice themselves to the vault mainframe.
Yeah, because it's like the whole concept was that it was to see whether they would comply with just murdering someone every year. When in reality, even though there was imposed consequence, there just weren't. Oh man, okay, well, we decided not to sacrifice anyone. Guess we all get to die now. Why aren't we dead? Ah, we've been bamboozled!
And prevent mass genocide. This cycle carried on for
Oh,
over a
wait,
decade.
you mean we're not all gonna die? That's crazy. Oh man, that's really unfortunate because I just took my cyanide pill.
And slowly over time, many different so-called voting blocks began to form, who would put up posters all around the vault on who everyone should vote for, and band together as a tribe to ensure none of their own people would get the overseer position. The strongest of these blocks, known as the Justice Block, was led by a man named Roy, who had recently gotten into an altercation with another vault dweller named Nathan. Because of Roy and the Justice Block's power, it became clear that their hatred of Nathan would surely result in him becoming the next overseer and promptly dying afterwards. So his wife Catherine Stone went to the Justice Block and begged and pleaded them to let her husband go. After all, he was a good family man, and he didn't deserve the harsh treatment. Horrifyingly though, the Justice Block agreed to not vote for Nathan on one condition. They would all have to constantly have their way with Catherine whenever they wanted, one of the most twisted forms of sexual coercion the series has ever seen. Catherine reluctantly agreed because of how much she loved her husband and wanted to save him, and for days on end, she was abused and taken advantage of. Until one day, Roy and the Justice Block started to laugh in Catherine's face, and after all of the torture she had been through, explained to her that they still, despite what she had been through, were going to vote for Nathan as the next overseer. Catherine, in a fit of rage and confusion, descended into pure madness and murdered multiple members of the Justice Block on the spot. This mass killing freaked out a majority of the vault, many of whom did not know the true meaning behind it, and thus Catherine was swiftly voted as the next overseer, ironically saving her husband in the end, after all. But now with the power of the overseer's position, Catherine decided to change the rules just a little bit. Instead of a vote being held to select the next person to sacrifice, it would now come down to random chance. All of the blocks inside the vault
as it probably should have been
freaked out, with some saying they needed to wait until their members got the role again so they could change the rules all over. But before anyone could think more rationally, more riots started to break out, and all of the blocks started to go into an all-out war, resulting in the deaths of almost everyone inside of the vault until only 5 people remained. These 5 vault dwellers, now witness to one of the most tragic and horrifying experimental results in vault history, decided that for the first time ever, they wouldn't sacrifice anyone in the coming year.
I mean, I kind of get that. That stage with how many people died, you might as well just go out with the rest of them, right?
Already occurred in these walls.
God, imagine being those last 5. Like, yeah, we consign ourselves to the fate that we are destined to. We're all gonna die. Why aren't we dead? You mean we all fought for nothing?
Time for it to finally end. But when that fateful day came to tell the Vault's computer mainframe that they would not be picking anyone for this year, instead of the Vault killing everyone, congratulations music began to play, and the mainframe happily exclaimed that the Vault dwellers had finally figured out the real experiment of the Vault, and that by having the human decency to save one another, the experiment would immediately end, and they could now live their lives in peace, free to come and go within the Vault as they please. Suddenly, immense guilt and surprise befell the remaining survivors, as they realized all these years of torture and sacrifice had been for nothing. And this emotional trauma led all of them to sit in a circle and take their own lives one by one, unable to bear the brunt of everything they now knew. In fact, only one single survivor did not off themselves here. And as the vault door opened, they were now the only remaining human being from this twisted place, now forced to live the rest of their days in pure agony. It's one of the most twisted vault stories in the entire franchise, without question. And it goes to show that when humanity has their backs against the wall, sometimes it can result in the most horrifying things out there. A vault full of betrayal and sacrifice alike, both for good and bad reasons.
You a sheep? You can listen to everything they tell you to do? Even if you know it's not for the betterment?
As humans to protect ourselves and those we care about when our lives are on the line. tribalism and reluctance to help one another tore this
It's funny
place
how like the
apart,
stories are so
when in
different
reality,
between these, but
simply
there's some
working together
overarching
from the
elements that are
start
consistent
would have
through all
resulted
of
in
them.
one of the happiest vault
Tribalism,
stories of all time.
desperation,
That makes it
primal
even more
elements.
tragic. Well, seemingly every vault in the Fallout universe has to some extent a crazy or sad story, few are as horrifying as the tale of Vault 92 from Fallout 3. Set amidst the backdrop of the Capitol Wasteland in Washington, D.C., the vault was supposed to be a promised bastion of hope that would preserve musical talent and artistic expression post the Great War, inviting in only the best of the best musicians from around the world. However, the actual experiment taking place was one designed to drain every last bit of hope out of humanity instead, because inside the walls of this elusive vault was a home away from home. Nice equipment and state-of-the-art technology meant residents inside would be able to survive for over 100 years, and spread all around the vault were some of the most expensive and top-of-the-line musical instruments that throughout the day the talented musicians would play to their heart's content. It truly was, for a time, one of the most beautiful places in the wasteland. But behind this beauty lied a dark secret, one that also involved the cascading of invisible sound waves. You see, the true experiment behind Vault 92, one that only the Overseer knew about, was a new highly classified and experimental invisible weapon known as the MWM-SCE, or White Noise Mind Suggestion Combat Experimentation.
Dude, I get migraines even at the most slightest of things, so this would be an absolute fucking tragedy for me to deal with.
This experiment was meant to try and induce a form of mind control over subjects by emitting large amounts of barely noticeable white noise sound waves that could quite literally control how people would think and act. At first, in the early periods of the vault, this weapon was used only in short trials and bursts, but they proved extremely effective. For example, easily making two vault dwellers fall in love with one another who previously had no feelings at all. The true horror of the vault only started after this though, once the white noise plan was fully implemented. Inside the vault, in every room, every common area, and even the bathrooms, classical music started to play non-stop. But hidden inside the sine waves
experimentation is needed for innovation, but this just seems
white noise
sociopathic.
that was being pumped into
what would
all
you
of the
possibly
vault
glean from this?
Non-stop. And
So
for a
dehuman
while, it
and
seemed
human.
like the experiment had been a success. Over a third of the musicians in the vault had entered what looked like a trance-like state and had become completely obedient, meaning the hope for using this technology for full control of humanity in the future looked bright. But suddenly,
there is a bit of a parallel with that as well, especially with the series, with the little devices that's on the back of the people's necks. Really, Vault-Tech's entire thing was just control. Like, they used the nuclear apocalypse as a way to set themselves up to be the rulers of humanity post bombs. Nothing like corporate oversight, am I right?
just as things started to look promising, they took a turn for the worst. Some of the residents in this trance-like state started to deteriorate quickly, with some quickly ripping their own skin off of their faces and eyes out of their sockets, screaming and grunting like wild animals. Others succumbed to a maddening rage and started to attack other residents, pulling their bodies apart limb from limb as they banged their mutilated bodies into walls, screaming for help. And maybe even more.
You know, this is giving horrible flashbacks to the necromorphs and the maddening aura that the statues gave in Dead Space. Like, if you didn't get turned into a necromorph, being near the markers would drive you insane. Very similar to that sort of vibe.
Horrifying, others would simply fall to the ground and look aimlessly into space, trapped now in their own minds, endlessly in a nightmare of sorts, locked in with nowhere to hide. It was quite clear that the white noise signal was the cause, but fearing a shutdown of all of the research, the Overseer ordered the remaining security guards to instead open fire on the innocent residents, as the minds of everyone inside quickly warped into prisons of pure torture, the likes of which we couldn't even imagine. Blood and gore covered the walls of each section of the vault.
Now that we're getting to this level of degradation, this is starting to feel much more Warhammer-y. As somebody who's been listening to a lot of Warhammer lore stories recently, there's a lot of parallels now. Like, the second we get to like machinations of the psyche and everything, yeah, back here it was just like funny little stories. Now this is Warhammer horror.
Souls haunted the halls, and still inside, the rings of this invisible contagion raged on. And as the final hours came upon this possessed place, the foundations started to crack, as a massive flood of water entered the vault, sealing away some of the biggest horrors in history. Not only was there a secret experiment going on that the residents had no idea would happen, but the vault itself was built next to a huge underwater reservoir of water that looked to almost be purposely there to destroy the experiment
I wonder if it was
forever
purposely there.
after it was done. Without a
Golly,
doubt, one of the
vault
most
tech.
appalling and dreadful situations that any vault residents have ever been put into. Because in a way, as scary as the outside world can be, especially the world of Fallout, the scariest things are always what come from within us, inside our minds, and the prisons and nightmares that they can subject us
And if anything, that might be the thing that compels me the most about the Fallout universe, is that sure, on the surface, it's goofy little post-apocalyptic world genre kind of thing, but when you look at the deeper necessity of the experimentation in the vaults, it really is a compelling story about the human psyche, more than anything else. Like, the capacity of the human spirit and everything. There's a lot of like subversive story arcs within the Fallout universe when you really look deep into it.
too, even with just a little bit of a push from something like white noise. One of the worst parts about any Fallout vault is all of the innocent people that are attached to these twisted and sick underground dungeons. And do you know what is more innocent than anything out there? Kids. And that's why the experiment that took place in Vault 75 from Fallout 4 may be one of the most disturbing of all time. Located directly beneath a Boston school, this vault lured in unsuspecting families by giving them all subsidized vault access in the event of bombs falling, all in close proximity to where their children would be. But at the dawn of the Great War, when all of these families made their way to the vault, once inside, the parents were immediately separated from all of the children, as they were told they had to undergo orientation, after which they were all put into a room and slaughtered like cattle. Now alone and afraid, the kids were gathered up by the scientists in the vault and locked away in rooms.
And what do you do when you have a mountain of dead bodies? You turn them into food! Those kids were probably eating their parents and not even realizing it. Oh god. That's horrible!
For further study. Because in Vault 75, the real experiment going on was a study into so-called refinement of human genetics. For years, the children were brainwashed by the scientists about the outside world that they called Up Top Land and how it was a horrible and mean place to live, which scared any of the kids away from trying to break out. And this gave researchers in the vault ample time to experiment on human embryos and young children alike, trying to make the strongest and smartest human beings possible. The most horrifying part of all, though, only happened once each child turned 18. For those that were very intelligent but not strong, admittance into the research team was granted, after which they would torture many other children that
what was that movie? I suppose it's a bit like Expedition 33, where, you know, you get to a certain age and then you just blip out of existence. What was that movie where it was literally you turned a certain age and you were shunned from the society? Like a really old movie. I forget what it was. Logan's Run, yes! God, that sounds very Logan's Run-esque.
they called friends for years. For the 18-year-olds who were amongst the strongest, immediately on their birthday, they would be taken away and harvested for their organs for further research and experimentation. And saddest of all, the 18-year-olds who displayed no superior genetics or abilities were discombobulated and stripped of skin in front of an audience. Truly, one of the most sick and twisted vault experiments in Fallout,
This is horrible!
not only because of the gruesome nature of the tests and trials, but also because of the people that it was being done to. The most innocent beings one could possibly imagine.
But Vault-Tec really knew no
As to
bounds,
what
did
happened
they?
to the vault later on, not much is known, but at some point it eventually was abandoned and overtaken by the Gunners faction in the game when we find it. Some people even believe that the Gunners themselves actually stem from some of these kids that were being experimented on. And you know, despite how evil Vault-Tec
That's so
already
grody.
obviously was, a vault like this reminds you that the people at this company quite literally had no humanity left. Some of the designers behind this vault and experiment even had kids of their own back home, knowing full well that other families would suffer while theirs were fine. Even in a world full of monsters, ghouls, and massive amounts of radiation, nothing is more
Whoa, such a moral conundrum. The entire universe is filled with monsters and horrible things, but the real terrifying thing, the real monster in this world, man.
scary than that.
Zero,
More
thank you
scary
for
than
the
human
resub.
beings and our ability to turn into the most evil things imaginable. As human beings, we crave attention, constantly, whether it be on social media.
Don't call me out like that. Don't call me out like that. Fuck you. Fuck you. How dare you?
Fictional
Couldn't be me.
worlds, or even in real life, the true goal of most
Could be,
people
thank you for following.
is to be admired in the eyes of others. So when constructing Vault 77 in Fallout before the Great War, scientists wanted to test this exact idea. On the day the bombs fell, a broadcast was sent out to all citizens who were to make their way into the vault. But when one lonely person got there, a man referred to as the Puppet Man, for which you will see why later,
the Puppet
he noticed
Man.
that he quite literally was the only person in the vault. Confused, he looked all around yelling for help from other people, but there was no answer. And suddenly, he heard the vault door closing. He rushed to the entrance, but it was too late, as he banged on the door screaming and pleading to be let out. But as hours turned into days, and days to weeks, it became clear to the Puppet Man this wasn't
Puppet
going to
ration?
happen. Even though there was ample food and water to survive inside, especially for just one man, he slowly started to descend into madness, crying and screaming constantly, asking for help or where everyone had gone. He would pace back and forth.
This is an amazing metaphor for streaming. Sure, you know, my chatters are there. Who's to say they're just not figments of my imagination? Who's to say? Like, I am just a person sat in front of a camera, and there's a scrolling chat running up my screen on my right, but are those people even real? Are they just figments of my imagination? Am I creating a facsimile of my existence to persevere through this crippling loneliness of life?
Constantly, draw on walls, or sing tunes to himself in made-up languages, all to try and maintain composure in this heinous experiment. But just on the verge of committing the unthinkable and ending his own life, he stumbled upon something strange, something he had missed in one of the corners of the vault before: a massive box of puppets. Because he had had no stimuli for so long now, the man quickly gravitated towards the box and started to play with the puppets to keep himself occupied. He put on fake plays, gave all of the puppets names, and
As the introvert extrovert that I am in my zone when I'm around other people, but I'm also equally just as content being a neat. If I had an entire vault to myself, I'd be in paradise. Don't need to worry about other people judging me. I can walk around the vault naked all the time? Sounds good to me.
created elaborate backstories to fill in their characters. But then, something strange happened, and one of the puppets started talking back. Astounded, the man freaked out and jumped for joy. It looked like he finally was going to have what he needed most: friends. For days on end, the man would talk to the puppets using different voices for each, talking to himself with just his hands. And he even crafted full-on storylines and drama between many of the different puppets, all in an attempt to maintain the little bit of sanity he still had left. But one day, in this twisted fairy tale created in his diseased mind, a murder occurred. The king puppet, maybe one of the single most important, had perished, and everyone in the puppet town was up in arms, not sure who to blame. But talking with a Vault Boy puppet, the man was told it was in fact him who had done the killing of the king. Horrified at what he had done, and scared for his life at the hands of these inanimate objects who he talked to through himself, the lone vault dweller and his one Vault Boy puppet made an attempt to escape the vault with the puppet firmly attached to the man's hand. But when they got to the entrance, an even bigger discovery was made. The vault door was already open, and not only that, it looked like it had been opened for years. This lone man, driven to insanity through isolation and nothing to do, hadn't even noticed his freedom had been there the whole time. Instead,
Oh my
dipping
God!
deeper and deeper into madness at the hands of his own mind, creating a false reality. However, at this point it was too late, and the lone dweller now stepped out.
I mean, if anything, his madness in the vault would have prepared him amazingly well for the life outside. Because he'd be just as mad as everyone else out there. This is probably one of the few people who went from a vault to living in the above ground who would have just integrated seamlessly.
The vault, no longer a man, but a monster. In the wasteland, there are tales that the first band of raiders the man encountered laughed at him in awe of how strange he was, taking him back to their camp to show others. But all we know is that when the raiders were later found, they and their entire camp had been massacred, with blood and human organs spread everywhere, and the smiling face of a man and his demented puppet on his hand, miles away walking the wastes. And it makes you wonder, was the experiment about protecting this one man from all of civilization, or
TF2 Heavy, is that you?
protecting all of civilization from this one man? Something we may never know. You know, for a series all about nuclear bombs and their devastation, you would assume radiation is the scariest thing in the wastelands of Fallout. And don't get me wrong, it is cause for so many horrible and odd things, but there actually is another substance that is even more horrifying and detrimental to the human body. And there's no better way to look into this mystery contagion than Vault 87 from Fallout 3. The original experiment for this vault, while still mostly unknown, nowadays doesn't matter all that much, and that's because what did become of this vault instead is likely much worse than whatever else Vault Tech had planned. Because before Vault 87 could even go into full operation, it actually was taken over by the US government and top biotechnical firms for research. Completely.
But I thought... I was under the impression that the US government was in cahoots with Vault Tech. Or was that... Am I misreading things? Oh god.
Hidden away from the public under top secret protocols, this vault was to be the testing grounds for Dr. Wayne Merrick and his staff, top researchers doing further studies into FEV, or the Forced Evolutionary Virus. For those of you that don't know, FEV was originally created by the United States government in 2073, 4 years before the bombs fell, as a countermeasure of sorts to China's bioweapons program. Originally called the Pan-Immunity Virion Project, the United States was looking for a way to genetically enhance US citizens through injection to biologically make them immune to China's new contagions. However, the program turned out to be a lot more sinister than was intended, and after animal trials for only a
sinister in the
few
Fallout
years,
universe?
human beings were
Crazy
next.
concept.
And one of the facilities where extensive testing was done was Vault 87 in the Capital Wasteland. Inside, multiple male and female test subjects were kidnapped and strapped to chains on chairs in rooms with one-way glass. Outside these rooms, scientists would sit and monitor as they slowly injected each subject with varying amounts of FEV and waited for results. For the males, their upper body strength began to massively improve, and for both males and females, the toughness of their skin gradually increased along with the thickness. But along with this, also came massively elevated levels of anxiety and aggression. And suddenly, some of the subjects
Dude, that's just me
started
living
form
day to day.
harrowing mutations on their body in the form of massive swells of pus-filled balls, with some even becoming enraged and trying to escape and kill on sight. Because of this, immediately most of the subjects were terminated without remorse. But over time, the remaining test subjects themselves were eventually able to rebel, even with the extensive security protocols. These subjects, these human beings, had been transformed into massive hulking monstrosities known as super mutants. In fact, almost all of the super mutants you see in Fallout 3 originate from this vault, because after taking it over, the
That
super
makes
mutants
a lot of
began
sense.
kidnapping more people in the wasteland to bring back and dip into the green substance, they called it, which transformed these innocent people into super mutants. And on top of this, the super mutants at
No,
Vault 87
you can't
were
inject
also being
FEV
experimented
steroids
on
into
by
your
a
body.
specific strain of FEV
You'll have
called
to do a lot of
EEP,
workouts to counter the
or
calorific intake.
Evolutionary
And I'm not being held
Experimentation
responsible for
Program,
that.
which resulted in them being much more dumb and confused than other super mutants we've seen in the series on the West Coast. Regardless though, the people inside this vault for hundreds of years overwent unbelievable amounts of pain and torture, quite literally transforming into monsters before their very eyes and losing everything that made them human in the first place. Imagine having to sit strapped to a table as people watched your body discombobulate and conform into something you couldn't even imagine, and as you slowly lost your mind and understood.
Dude, this is slowly dipping into I have no mouth, but I must scream territory. Ugh.
Of the universe. Going to this vault in Fallout 3, it's a long reminder of this past, and you will find many dead test subjects and blood and gore in multiple rooms, along with countless logs about what really happened at this top secret test facility, committing some of the most heinous acts imaginable. And it really makes you stop and think when you realize our actual governments in real life have done similar things like this before, and it's crazy to know that things this evil can actually happen.
Ah.
For most vault dwellers in Fallout, their lives inside the vaults would have been filled with pain, horror, and sadness. But as bad as these fates would have been, being subject to some truly insane human experimentation and torture, the saving grace of it all would have been that at least at some point it would all end. Either in your own death or the downfall of the entire vault entirely, the madness would at some point finally come to a conclusion. However, there is one especially evil vault from Fallout 3
I think
where
I
this
remember
would
this
not
one.
have been the case, and instead, you would have been subject to an eternity in hell. Vault 112. Because inside the vault was an experiment being run using something called Tranquility Lane, a prototype for advanced virtual reality software that was meant to give humanity a home away from home after the bombs fell in the hard-to-live-in wasteland. When you first enter the vault, you are approached by a robo-brain who tells you to enter a pod, and when you enter the main control room, you are met with a massive structure and sleeping pods, which if you enter, you are transported into the simulation. Inside is a nice middle-class suburban town, where you and every other vault dweller who has been trapped here for years is living out their lives in pure bliss. It actually seems really nice at first, especially compared to most of the other places you have been to in Fallout 3, but quickly,
Ooh, speaking of, I have no mouth, but I'm a scream.
As you approach an
Becoming
innocent-looking
nothing but
girl
the
near the
plaything of the
playground,
AI.
an older German man's voice greets you, and you slowly uncover the true meaning behind this experiment. The voice you are hearing is none other than Dr. Braun, creator of the Garden of Eden creation kit, and he brings to your attention that he is actually running this experiment over and over for his own sick pleasure.
Yeah.
He's connected to a nearby pod outside the main facility, and inside the simulation, he is over and over again killing innocent people and terrorizing or torturing them in whatever way he sees fit. And this time, he wants you to try and do some of the killing. Because in this simulation, each time the doctor has stalked and mercilessly tortured or picked off each individual, he starts it over again and gets off on this sick twist endlessly.
Groundhog Day, but on
over
crack.
Again, these innocent vault dwellers are subject to true horror and murder all within their own head, but still feeling the fear and pain only for their memory to be wiped and for the simulation to start all over. For years and years, over thousands of simulations, this one heinous doctor has been killing and torturing these people endlessly, and they aren't even aware of it, meaning they must feel the full fear of death for the first time each time. And compared to most other vaults, Vault 112 really is just a different level of evil entirely. I mean, seriously, imagine being subject to the worst cruelty imaginable.
Probably the only kid in the entire game that looks like a kid. And of course, it's a fucking grown-ass man pretending to be a kid. Hi, Chris Hansen here!
Imaginable, not only for the one life you have, but for infinite lives, trapped away in a pod containing your body, but your soul and mind caged away like an animal. And it really makes you wonder what else could be out there in other vaults, or even whether some of the journeys we are going on in other games are even real in the first place.
Oh, don't give me that bullshit!
And finally, I wanted to go over what just
last
might
one,
be
guys,
the
last one.
scariest and most horrifying vault in the history of Fallout. And it's not what you're expecting, because Vault 63 in Fallout 76 is anything but flashy. In fact, as of writing this, it hasn't even been officially released to the game, but will be here in just a couple of weeks. And though after the release, it surely will not be too terrifying or gruesome, the reason it's horrifying right now, and the reason I wanted to put it as the last on my list, is because, well, because of the fear of the unknown. After all, isn't that the real scariest thing about all of these
Oh, that's a
vaults in
cop-out.
Fallout? The wild experiments you have to uncover, the sadistic stories you must piece together from terminal logs or environmental storytelling, and that rush of adrenaline you get from stepping inside of one of these human dungeons for the first time. Because it's that very essence which makes Fallout as a series so special in the first place, and even more so, the vaults being such a key part of that. Because no matter what crazy stories or twists and turns we will get from future games and shows, remember that the fear of the unknown, of what's out there, has always been at the heart.
Which in of itself tells us that we should be afraid of the story writers within Bethesda. Because those are the people coming up with these weird, twisted stories, so these ideas must be living in the minds of these people to begin with. Ah!
Of why we love vaults so much, and also the true key to what makes them so insane and scary. Simply the idea of knowing that so many still lie undiscovered, and that there's so much more for us to find out there, is what makes this series so great.
I agree.
Especially when a lot of it is probably extremely
I would say the
heinous
Vaults are the
things
biggest
we
draws for the
couldn't
Fallout
even
franchise.
imagine.
100%.
And that's why we all love Fallout.
Which in of itself is a little bit telling of our grotesque minds more than anything else, but hey.
But as always, thank you guys so much for watching.
Woo, well,
Videos
there
like
we
this take
go.
an absolutely massive amount of time and effort with over 50-page scripts, tons of research, and days of editing. So I really appreciate all
dude,
the
this
love
was
and
a
support,
great-
and especially for any of you who
great
have joined
video.
the membership program.
I know
or
it's a
leave
bit of a
your
long,
super
drawn-out
thanks
one, but I hope you
donations in
guys
all the
enjoyed this.
videos. It does mean a lot that you are enjoying the content so much, and I really appreciate it. And I'm always focused on making things better and better with each video month by month. So feel free to check out.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this, please make sure you go give the original a like as well. Go and subscribe to Frank. And yeah, if you guys want me to check out more Fallout-related content, I gotta say, this was a great video. I love the Fallout universe, and as much as I'm not as likely to play the games, I'm more than happy to learn about its universe. So if there's more stuff you'd like me to check out, leave comments down below as to stuff you think I'd enjoy. And make sure to join our Discord, join me live on Twitch for live reactionary stuff, and I will see you guys in the next video. Billy, what's the moral of today's video? Don't be a human. Okay, bye.